welcome in everybody to our final day of the VCS English 2023 spring split. It's been I was going to say it felt like a long time, but honestly, it hasn't felt like a ridiculously long time as we come to the closure of everything. It's me, Rebel Fox, and I'm joined with Tim. Nice to see you because I think you haven't been around too much for the entirety of the split. So it was nice to see the last couple of days you're really getting back into things as we get ready to ramp up for playoffs. As we get our decisions for playoffs have been decided. We were talking that there was some stuff that could happen, tiebreakers potentially to pop up maybe tomorrow, depending on how today goes. But for now, we've got two remaining series. Cerberus versus SPTCE determines some seeding. And then our final match of the entire year, Saigon Buffalo versus GAM, has absolutely no meaning other than just some fun. So maybe we'll get some crazy picks for that series too.
Yeah, I mean the first series for sure. Both teams are tied for 8 and 5 right now, which means that one of those teams is gonna catch up with Team Wales and probably is gonna have a tiebreaker with them at that point for that second seed, which is so important to dodge GAM in the first round, because no matter how the GAM game goes today, and if they get the perfect split, the second one within 3 splits last spring, they already managed to do it summer, not so much, but dodging I think GAM in first is really important. So I'm gonna be excited to see if Team Wales or Cerberus or SPTC actually makes it happen. I would guess that Cerberus, even though they won yesterday, they really didn't look that great, and it was more Team Secret really sprinting it. I think they're still the weakest team currently. Especially Drakta looked really off yesterday. Game 2 was a bit better, but game 1 he basically really tried to hold the team back and was absolutely jungle gap. So I think they have a lot to prove, and I think SPTC is the team to prove it against.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there that Cerberus had a bit of a backslide. We were so nervous about this backslide that we actually thought, again, if they end up losing to Team Secret, then Saigon Buffalo can sneak in on a victory over top of GAM at the end of the split, which is what we were keeping track of to be really, really interesting. But that's not how things turned out. Instead, they are going to lock their playoff spot. And we've been under the assumption that this is the team that GAM really wants to play. Should we walk into playoffs with this kind of coming through? Even if they end up in third place, I think that no matter what, GAM is taking Cerberus as they appear to be performing weakest. SPTCE's got a bunch of star power. Wales has been performing great. So both those teams are probably not the people that you want. So if you're Cerberus, this feels like a must-win if you want to avoid GAM in the beginning of playoffs. And then if you're GAM, you have to bite the bullet and play one of the teams that you probably would have played a little bit later on. It is, of course, double elimination playoffs, which does help swallow the pill a little bit more for either one of the teams that ends up losing to GAM, as they have a second life potential to come back. We'll see as the days goes on. So tell me a bit about what you have liked from these two teams over the course of the split. Like for example, from Cerberus, obviously they're having a bit of a rough one, but all split they've had a lot of a different performance. So who are you liking today specifically into SPTCE?
I think that going off recent performances as well for those teams, I think Cerberus. I said it yesterday and I say it again. Ego hasn't played many games. I still think he's the much better jungler between Drakta and him. Especially seeing Drakta play yesterday, it felt like Cerberus was just the weaker Wales. They don't have any macro. They don't have much macro, even less so than Wales. They're really struggling, and then they were fine-ish in team fights, but they weren't really great. And I think going up against SPTC, who all around looked very much solid in basically every aspect of the game, I think is going to be really rough. And especially Cerberus has to figure out what they're doing with their plays, because you have Ego, you have Drakta, and then you have Cuba, who came in yesterday for no reason, and basically I have no idea why he was there, because he basically played Run of Peace Champions. So he came in, played Run of Peace Champions, played Rakan in the first game, had a miserable performance. That was probably one of the least impactful like Rakan games I've seen all season. Like, we were sitting here and we were giving, I think, points to Nagia and I'm not sure who, and we were like, the rest of the team really doesn't deserve any points, and we had to give it to the losing team because there was nobody who actually deserved it at all. Drakta was running it and botlane was running it massively. So I think they have to prove that they can really step it up in early game, and I think the way for that is to bring in the good Ego.
Okay, so I think distilling it back a little bit, you just want to see the strongest roster Cerberus can put out there, whether that is
Yes.
Draxthar actually showing up, whether it's Rana P actually showing up, whether it is Ego. We've been having this discussion literally all split, where Draxthar has had really bad performances, and then we're like, okay, where is Ego? Like, why is Ego not coming in? Then Ego comes in, and Ego doesn't have the greatest of series, and then they bring Draxthar back, and it's funny because every single time we follow this pattern, Draxthar doesn't play well. Ego steps in for some series, whether it's unimportant, whether it's a bad team, no matter what it is, has some good performance, some bad performance. Draxthar comes back in and then plays the series of his life. And then we're like, oh, wow, okay, Draxthar keeps the job for a short amount of time. That's been the tale of Draxthar, literally all split compared to Ego. So maybe we'll get a chance to see if we can get Ego actually going inside of a game. This is a really important one. So the question that we've been contemplating is just, okay, is Draxthar scrimming with the team? Is that why Ego isn't having as good a performance? But they've had good games with Ego in the past. So today will be much more indicative of the fact that Cerberus showing us what they're going to do in playoffs, whether it's going to be Draxthar or Ego kind of taking that front role. And I don't think Ron OP over Huber is ever going to be a discussion. Like, it should be Ron OP most of the time, unless they're doing something with range supports that Huber can try to abuse in some capacity. So for SPTCE then, this is a team that I think we are a lot more excited about because DNK is having a bit of a better split. DO1's having a good split. NPER is still NPER. And Slater and Paulette have had just a renaissance of a split, doing a lot better for themselves. So, if you're SPTC, what are you attacking on Cerberus, especially after what you saw yesterday? Who's got the best chance to shine here on SPSE Esports?
Honestly, just captain him in jungle. I think that DNK and DR1 had a really solid to good split. I think they've been doing really well, and I think on the other side, I think Draxthar is really attackable. And when you have losing jungle, just play him mid jungle duo really aggressively, and I think Draxthar will fall apart. You can win mid jungle duo, and from there it's unplayable because I think Slater and Pellet, will be absolutely fine in bot lane. I think Huber and Artemis have been looking okay. In game 2, they were looking okay. In game 1, they were getting solo kills left, right, and center. So I think they're also really inconsistent. Should that come to pass, so I think you just play mid, you play into bot, you play into top, you make the side lanes unplayable because Cerberus mid jungle duo doesn't look like a top mid jungle duo in the league, and then the other roles kind of fall apart around them.
I find it fun because of all of our junglers, a lot of them are playing Lee Sin and Wukong and Vi, and they're sticking to that bread and butter again and again and again. And DNK is the one that says, I'm going to play Sejuani, I'm going to play Maokai, I'm going to play Zac as he did against Gam just a couple days ago. And honestly has looked amazing on the tank junglers as opposed to some of the aggressive stuff. As we're going to step into game number 1 here, draft is kicked off. Cerberus on the blue side, SPTCE on the red side. We're seeing Tristana get banned, Sejuani, no DNK Sejuani. Gwen is also taken off for NPER, makes sense. Talia, Xayah, and Varus removed from the board. It's weird, Varus feels like he fell off the ban list and hasn't been picked very much, and yet out of nowhere, SPTC Esports just says, yeah, you're not getting it, Artemis, which doesn't feel like an Artemis champion in the first place. So that is a bit of a strange one. I wonder if Yato's been experimenting with that in the mid lane a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say the inventor of AP with Varus, but one of the main people is a German mid laner in Norway who actually Caps basically said that he was the one who he watched to pick it up in the LEC. He said but actually, are there changes for the?
I believe we're on 13.7, yeah. Yeah.
So they should be out. And he said with a new item, it's completely broken. It's pick or ban, like you lose champion. So yeah, maybe it comes from there.
I have misspoke. We're on 13.6. I thought somebody had told me, I think the other day we were discussing this and we thought it was 13.7, but it's 13.6. So we're not quite on the Varus's busted patch yet, but hopefully when we get there, it'll be some exciting stuff because I know the build path has gotten a lot better. Quickly summarizing what we're seeing here. Draxthar goes back to Wukong. That's not crazy. We are getting Huber instead of Ron OP again today, which is of interest. Now, they, of course, do run Renata Glask, so it makes a lot more sense. They have that champion that should be more of a Huber champion than a Ron OP champion. But on the other side, they grab up Annie, they grab up Zeri, and they get the Vi to challenge up against this squad.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that we don't see, for example, Gragas pick up here into the Wukong specifically, because you don't really want to go face first into the Renata. And honestly, what I want to see is put the Annie bot. Put Palette on the Annie, because it still gives you that engage potential, but it's very hard for Renata to do anything against it, and you should be completely fine in the Renata matchup itself. So I think that could be a great move for Zeri Annie to just dominate bot lane. and basically make the Renata completely useless.
Okay, the other interesting little tidbit here is that it is also Vinboys playing over Slater, which is a weird decision coming in at the very end.
Can I say this about VCS teams? I hate what they're doing with their rosters. I have no idea what they're doing, and like the only team that has swapped rosters this much in recent memory is T1 when they still had like 2 top tier mid laners and so on, right?
Yes.
Like, and it makes no sense. Like, you've been playing with Slater like 99% of your games. You've been winning a shit ton. Why are you playing Vinboys, man?
Great question. I'm not sure. The thought process is maybe the Zeri is a bit more of a pocket pick for him, but I mean recently Slater's even taken to playing Zeri and has been pretty good at it too. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. I remember
Slater smurfing last year already on the champion. Like it's like I remember it's a few of Slater's best games on that Zeri. So I'm really surprised. Now we see 3 more pickups. The Ari in mid lane, so it is going to be the Annie in bot. I really like that pickup. We see on the other side the Vega, who is still unnerved. I'm going to be nerfed in 13.7, but here on 13.6, still one of the strongest champion in the games. And who's also a really strong champion is the Sion, and might now be answered with a Mundo, who definitely is that top lane tank matchup that we like to see, especially when Pan is in the game. It's not too surprising that the handshake comes in, but you could also go for something like a Camille. You could be going for something like a Fiora and give Emperor a bit more carry potential in the top lane.
Interesting. This would be a very weird way to finish out our split. Not only having 2 massive kind of really important bot laners get subbed out at the last possible minute for these 2 teams in Slater and in Ron OP, but also you get this weird tanky-tank matchup that we're not really accustomed to seeing a bit. I think Stream is frozen here, if I'm correct, so we might just be hanging out on a screen until Spoods is able to get us back to the right position.
It ends up being in Nard, so we can definitely tell you that already, as you have seen. So it's another pickup in the top lane, and it is definitely some more carry potential for Emperor, and it's one of the Emperor champions, obviously.
Yeah, certainly better at that. I was about to say, like, Mundo has been picked like 6 times or something like that. Like, there's almost no chance it's going to be a Mundo. Would have been cool to see, but unfortunately, it's just not the play that ended up coming through for this guy. As we're going to get back into this real quick. Hopefully games going to start pretty quickly. Yeah, the late season changes are just, they're especially with such an important series on the line, where it's like, okay, winning the series makes sure that you cannot necessarily get picked by GAM. Losing the series ensures that you can be picked by GAM. I don't know. Like, it is a strange one. I wouldn't have made this decision, but of course I'm not the head of a team, so I'm not gonna. I guess if they think this is what's going to give them the best chance to win, I guess that's fine. It doesn't seem like it from our perspective here. It's a bit.
I mean, all I can say is that this split, when it's not going great, you sometimes have to make choices as a coach. I mean, I swapped out my main jungler for our top lane substitute because we were playing better with him. So in the jungle, right? So there can be weird things that happen, and Yado might need to flash here.
Yeah, so. I like the early aggression from Paulette on the Annie. The Annie support is something that has not gotten anywhere near enough attention here, but it has a really good win rate. If I recall, this Annie's at like 80% win rate or something when it's in the support role in this region, which is pretty cool to see.
I also think that's a bit of a weird set though, because what I think, and that's true for most regions, is that she's played in mid lane, and if she has a really good matchup in bot, they put her bot. So I feel like while she's blind picked in mid lane like a lot, right, and still has positive win rates nearly throughout the board, she's usually just a really good counter pick in bot lane because she's used that way. So I think she's strong either way, but I agree, definitely in bot lane and specifically into Renata, she should have a pretty free lane. We see Renata actually going for the heal, which usually tells you that, well, Renata is not thinking about lane much because she doesn't think she can really kill anybody there.
Yeah, it's similar to the little Lulu build, because even the Relic Shield comes out here, where it's one of those things, it's really hard to kill them during the laning phase. It's a lot more defensive of a setup. It's not the typical aggression you'd want to see out of a support like this. This is an interesting decision. Level 2 invade. This is like the only time Vi can actually beat the Wukong at the beginning of the game. Yeah, and Drakthar has to flash immediately. Because again, this Wukong's such a proficient duelist when you have all the abilities. You have an auto cancel, you have an attack speed buff, you got a multi-target hit, a dash, you have the invisibility with a clone that also applies auto attacks. And DNK just has absolutely none of that, Drakthar. You're going to go to your other side of the jungle. You're not going to touch any of this farm. Just going to bully him super quickly. And like you said, DNK already taking your advice to some extent. Klein's burnt by Artemis on the bottom side as well. They're going to go into Vin Boys, who might have to flash or cleanse themselves. Ignite goes down. What are we doing? Walking right back in. Easy enough for Vin Boys to be able to kind of continue going, and Paulette just destroying those two with the damage, and the Ignite at the beginning gets first blood for SPTCE.
Yeah, I mean, SPTC just dominating mentally, physically. Draktar is being forced out. This guy has both of his buffs, and DNK is just hunting him. This Vice, he is a menace, man. I mean,
that was wild,
honestly, when I said dominate their mid jungle because they can't, like, they're useless, I think DNK took that a bit too personally and really went for it because okay, so first of all, let's look at the bot lane situation again.
Sure.
Artemis insta-cleanses this, and then they think they can turn it onto Wind Voice, and it's a lot of damage in the first place, but Artemis, with Ignite, actually gets bursted down by Wind Voice, and then Huber can't get the kill, and now, I think Draktar was cancelled on the Raptor Camp as well. He actually got 2 CS, so I think he got some of the Raptor Camp at least, but he's still level 2, and Vice on the hunt again. This guy is relentless. What?
Yeah,
at this point... Draktar is giving up. He's just taking mid CS for XP. He needs a level 3.
There we go. Okay, that's a bit better. With the double buffs in level 3, it should be a bit easier for poor Draktar to actually get something done here.
But let's India here. They're not letting me live.
They're not letting the
Oh my
Wukong
God.
play the game. This is the right of play, though, because, again, the earliest that you can attack the Wukong, the harder it is for this champion to get off the ground, to get going, to get onto first items, things like that. And all of that is working out super well for SPTCE, as Draktar is just going to be completely clamped out at the beginning of this game. First full clear is devastated. So you have to wait to the end of the second clear before you really start to feel like a champion again. All right. SPTC is on something special here today.
I mean, they came really to play, and I think Emperor also came to play. Is flashing, misses the Q, gets the kill.
Yeah,
I mean,
well played. Okay, good job, Emperor. It was a little risky there for a second, but we're okay.
Not to be that guy, but it's not looking good. And
No.
it's just looking like a player diff, honestly. Like, the draft doesn't give this. Like, we saw that DNK was doing that entire sequence where he ran down enemy jungle without top and bit prio. Like, Yado had push, Pan had push, it didn't matter. They couldn't move because if they move, they lose too much on their lane. So they literally had to leave their jungle out to dry. And now DNK is just gonna start this early Drake, and there's nothing really Wukong can do because he needs to clear his own jungle. He needs to get back into the game. And DNK basically says, okay, I have enough of a lead now that I can use my lead to just get the Drake, because Vi doesn't need to massively snowball. All she needs to do is get her team ahead.
It's been a great start. DNK has been playing like a man possessed in the last couple of weeks of play. In fact, SPTCE, I guess so far as to say, they have looked great. Their series against Cam was probably the most competitive that we've seen literally all season. So if they're finding their power spike as a squad right now is the perfect time to do it. Not only getting a chance to get second seed for plans, ensure yourself that you can't be picked up by Gam, but also beating down another playoff team is a ton of vote of confidence that you're going to have walking in. If you're beating them this badly, again, obviously looking fantastic. As Draktar finally gets a little bit of recompense, he grabs up the Raptor Camp away from the Vi, but that wasn't even a reset Raptor Camp, because I don't think DNK ever touched it. That was a first that was the first iteration of Raptor. So this is not being that much golden experience taken away. It's something, but again, Draktar would have wanted more.
Yeah, and it's 1.5k gold lead, while there's another fight in bot. Artemis is going aggressive.
Yeah, Paulette was able to get a solid stun off there that ended up doing quite a bit more damage than prepared. But unfortunately, Artemis was a very, very short distance from having red-white to be able to actually go with. And now DO1 underneath the mid tower is going to go for it. Charm's going to miss. Huber's still alive with the E. He's actually doing a great job. DO1 might just int into Artemis and give a free kill away. Now Yado's here for more punish. And there we go. This is Cerberus finally finding some strike backs. This is Vinboy stuck in it between a rock and a hard place right now. Has to try to find something. That's going to be Draktar jumping on top. Yada's going to be right behind him. Ultimate's going to get another kill. As that is Cerberus fighting back to some extent. It has been a really terrible early game, so that takes them out of a deep, deep hole.
I wouldn't call that Cerberus fighting back. I would call that SPTC hitting themselves in the face.
Yes.
Like, they're they're relentless. Like, I have no idea what the one is doing here. He just lost his mind. And then Winboys, doesn't he have E to just get over that wall? I guess he does.
He must have used it at some point, otherwise.
So, yeah. I mean, this disaster, and now the gold is even, and now Artemis is suddenly in the game, Yado is in the game, and I have questions. Big ones. Like, why are we sprinting it? All we have to do is do nothing, stack Drakes, win game, and we do that, and we lose the game. So, yeah, exciting.
Yeah, it's a lot worse. You're giving gold over to two important members of the team. Not only is it Artemis, who we know is probably leading some of the voting for top bot laner this split, because Style and Shogun haven't really had the best of splits in general, and Cerberus is making playoffs. Oh, okay, Yado, I was also about to praise, but thankfully I didn't. So it's not a caster curse if I didn't say it ahead of time. But Yado on this Vygar has been an absolute beast. If you remember, I think it was last split that his Aria was like the only champion he had won on. He's having not that level of performance on Vygar, but he's Vygar games are looking head and shoulders above the majority of his other champions. And so, getting a roam like that, finding that big kill, finding big shutdowns, getting more AP, juicing up this mid laner is another win condition that Cerberus is going to have for the late game.
Absolutely, and now we see a full swap coming into Cerberus. They want to play around this Herald and want to secure that for themselves. So far, though, Vi and Ari have complete control over mid lane, so they can't really start it yet. And meanwhile, Winboys and Palette are just getting stuffed in bot where Yado's getting engaged.
Jumped on again. They missed the initial engagement. You could see DNK was stuck under the tower into the cage, but couldn't actually force him out. Even with no flash, Yado just lives this.
Yeah, and that now means that the Herald should be going over to Cerberus, because two of the most important ultis are not up anymore. The Nars getting chunked out in top lane. He's really having fun right now. On the other hand, I would like to see no plating second bot, actually, and Engage coming in top.
Oh my goodness. Huber just takes too much damage, ends up dying. I don't even know what actually did damage to him at the end. He had like 200 health. That just disappeared out of nowhere.
I think that the Emperor killed all the minions, so the turret actually killed him.
The turret, yeah, okay. And now Artemis is getting played. So Emperor with a 1v2 outplay underneath the tower buys back a ton of space. Drakthar's fighting in the river alongside Yado to try to get something, but SPTCE might have actually gotten enough to at least prevent the Rift Herald from going down. It's going to reset here, almost certainly. Nope, it's not going to reset. 1,700 health. It's on 1 bar. Stop paying attention. They gotta break something. What a massive cage, though! Cerberus, you gotta be kidding me, Yado. How does he find 3 there, Tim?
So, I haven't actually seen the SPTC GAM series, but if this team got close to winning against GAM, I have questions about the validity of VCS being competitive in any sense of the word.
That was unbelievable.
Because, Yado's cage was good and so on, but, how are you walking into that cage?
Oh my god. They just stacked even into the Infernum, too. Infernum just layers, Duskwave absolutely rips them to pieces with the extra Graphnum shot. That was ridiculous. That was the highest value Vygar cage I think I've seen all split into VCS.
No, I mean, I think that's an angle for a period, man. Yeah. I think that's probably the highest impact Vega cage I've seen, period.
Yeah.
They get 2 turrets in top lane on top of that. Yes, second Drake is going over to SPTC, but suddenly 3k gold down and they hate winning. There's no other explanation at this point.
After getting such a massive early lead, not only the first blood in the bottom lane, also bullying Drakthar completely out of their jungle. Again, they've just tossed 2 massive plays away, and Cerberus punished them for it super, super well. It has nothing to do with substitutes here. It has nothing to do with anything else kind of happening on your screen. It's that Cerberus is taking advantage of SPTCE kind of throwing it. That should have been SPTCE favorite. Again, Emperor had just basically killed Huber and knocked Artemis out of the fight. Yado was without a flash and without half his health bar. Drakthar was down 25% of his health bar. They had an advantageous situation with better health bars and better tools, and they still got dumpstered by Cerberus just stepping up to the plate.
I don't know. I want to explain it to you, but I can't. This is too much for me. I mean, I watch people running it down on a daily basis. I'm into the inting, okay? But this is next level. I've not seen that on this level, because I felt like every proactive decision after the early invades that SPTC did just backfired massively, and they every proactive decision just ended up being killed given over, and I think that might continue with another engage from DNK.
Okay. DNK gets onto Artemis. Ultimate gets popped here by Huber to help peel. That's going to be Annie's ultimate kind of paused as well, but it's not even a stun that's going to end up going down as Vinboys versus Artemis 1v1. That's an ultimate coming in from Pun, who's going to get stopped up by DNK, who's still going to be in the face of Tibbers. Now here comes Drakthar as well, trying to find Vinboys. That's going to be a flash away for Vinboys, who's going to be able to get away. That should be DNK's life thrown to the wolves as Cerberus again finds something. Now, Dio1 did find the roam of Yato. The flash gets him back to the Honeyfruit and avoids the second half of the Q, which might have been a death sentence. There's the Event Horizon, forces the flash out of Dio1, and now Drakthar wants to try to find him. Isn't going to chase, doesn't have flash, just going to walk away. Instead, it's still 2 kills here, or a kill coming over from the side of Cerberus.
I mean,
how does this keep happening? Like,
I really didn't want to be the guy, but I kind of called it. Like, this looked bad because, like, going for those spot plays is really hard to do when you don't have mid prio. Drakthar was actually bot side. Mid prio was over to Yato, so the Ahri couldn't be first in the move, which means that you're probably getting outnumbered in bot lane. Now engage onto Drakthar.
Yeah, he's in the middle of the jungle. He's still chasing down Dio1 for whatever reason, even though Yato is back. And it gets punished by DNK, who is on the return after dying in the bottom side. Now DNK is going to be able to counter farm some additional jungle, maybe get the level lead back to being even. Again, DNK was able to bully him out early. Some of the plays in the meantime have been like, it's led to Drakthar being 4-1, so the advantage makes sense. So DNK hoping to bridge that gap. Yato also super low. Again, never left after that first one. You can see Palette wants to punish it. Wow, Palette. I appreciate the X-Flash, honestly. If he's sitting in the wrong position, ends up getting stunned up, probably dies to Palette right there. But fortunately, Yato, better game sense than that, just walks back too far.
Yep, that was a nice idea. It didn't end up happening. But the big thing is that Ahri, who wasn't in the greatest spot because so many plays of her failed, and is now up 30 CS and just got a 700 gold shutdown onto Drakthar. So Ahri is completely back in the game. She's in a really strong position. She should have her first item. And Vinboys is somehow getting free CS in bot lane and free turret in the bot lane, and is also scaling into the game. So while there is currently a good gold lead for Cerberus still, I think there are still chances for SBTC and now another engage.
Okay, Ultimate, once again, popped here by Huber to try to peel for Artemis, but he's not going to be able to get out of this one. Ultimate popped, and he's going to drop Moonlight Vigil, which basically does nothing to poor DNK. Ooh, tanks that ability. Drakthar now running after Enper. Pun also joins from the side, but it's not going to end up finding anything. That's a Tibbers to be able to find the stun, a big Q from DNK. Maybe they can actually find more. If the Charm ends up landing, they actually get Chain CC down onto Pun, and Pun just dies as well. After running in from the side, trying to help out somebody, DNK is in a little bit of threat right there. I was terrified that was going to happen. TP into mid lane from Yato as well, just to make sure that the defense of this tower is complete. But again, plays back and forth between these two Vinboys, going to freely farm on the bottom side, grab this first turret of the game, or second turret of the game, my apologies. And it's SBTC getting themselves out of another bad situation that they kind of forced themselves into after these early game plays.
Yeah, and finally plays start working. Both, of course, the first play in bot and now this play, where they are able to get something back, and now finally also in the game, DNK gets a shutdown. Really important for him to keep snowballing on the Vi, because if you fall behind as a Vi, you're just really squishy. You can't kill anybody, and it's really rough. But with the advantage over Drakthar, he can really keep the pace of the game high and snowball the game for his team. And now I'm expecting on the next Vi ultimate to see another engage, or we're just splitting. So one team is taking the Drake, one team is taking the Herald. First Drake over to Cerberus, which means the Drake stacking, which would have been a Mountain Soul, is also stopped for now.
Yeah, I suppose this is fine for SBTCE. They're still trying to get gold in the right places, and so they don't want to take a massive team fight. Given the way that Yato has played so far, which is like perhaps the one sole really decent bright spot that has come through from Cerberus in these big engagements, they don't want to play into that super heavily quite yet when they don't have to. So they're like, okay, we can throw this dragon, we'll get Rift Herald, we'll get top turret, we can play into the defensive bot tower if Ari's able to kind of clear the wave up against the Vigar. Dio1's playing really respectfully, though, so that ends up not being the case. So it does end up just being the trade of Rift Herald for Dragon, as opposed to anything else. Pun gets Enper gets a bit more damage. Rift Herald dropped in mid lane immediately to crack this tower, get some more gold onto Vinboys as well. Why? Why the Moonlight Vigil onto solo Palette? They're trying to find an angle, and Pun is going to be able to split the two in half. Vinboys pops ultimate as well and has not hit an auto attack yet. Man, what are we watching?
All I can say is that I don't remember VCS being this.
This is like, we've had really good games this play. Like, you should have been here for the game against Cam, but good lord.
Like,
These two teams, the reason they bring in Vinboys and Huber is because they need to hide all their good play for playoffs. It's just trying to give away no information. Because right now, they look like two confused teams right there. I think 4 ultimates get popped with absolutely no benefit other than burnt flashes on a couple sides.
Yeah, I really don't know. Honestly, this engage made no sense. They weren't in position really to fight it, and both these teams I think have to chill down, look for plays, set up vision, and then actually play around the vision. Because whenever we see engages, they usually go into the darkness. So they set up vision and then fight beyond their vision, and that's something that I mean I didn't think we would see in this league, because the players should know that you should fight in your own vision control. But in the end, they end up fighting outside of it, and that always is a huge risk because you don't know what's behind.
It is you can see the gold distribution in this game. Artemis leads everybody by quite a bit, likely because of the damage that was dealt to the bottom tower, kills from a couple of different fights, farming effectively. But honestly, trying to come up with that, at least from the scoreboard, doesn't make a ton of sense. You saw the beginning of the game went really, really well for Artemis, but since then really hasn't done all that much. So again, it's a little confusing that the gold lead is this crazy over top of Vinboys after Vinboys basically got solo tower on bottom side. Nonetheless, also has gone for double cloak, prior to buying up the Infinity Edge, which I'm certain is probably going to be the second buy here to be able to do quite a bit more damage to DO1 Vinboys on the front side of a fight. Just trying to, get themselves in fighting shape much faster than normal. That's a blue buff steal in the face of Drakthar, in the face of Yado. It's a takeaway. It's not huge, but again, it is, SPTC Esports, again, continuing on this DNK as a Chad mentality from the beginning of the game, just bullying as best as possible. Emperor also much stronger in the side lane now. I mean, does have Trinity Force done against Pun, who's rocking quite a bit of armor, has the Thorn Mail and such on the way. But again, SPTC Esports feels like they have regained control of the game to some extent.
Yeah, they definitely have the control for now. They're able to invade here and there. They're able to play a bit aggressive, but now Emperor has to really be careful because there's the entire family of Cerberus coming to kill him, and I think he's dead.
That's a great question. I mean, the angle is only for Drakthar here more than anything else. E doesn't get him over the wall. Flash does get him over the wall. And that's that. I think Drakthar ends up following with Flash for nothing. Unfortunately, it is Flash for Flash, so it's a little harder to utilize than our ultimate. That is at least a takeaway. But now the Wukong, Cyclone's going to have a lot less kind of juice to it in comparison. So a little easier, in my opinion, to be able to utilize. You just press Cyclone after WEing or EWing, whatever the case is in the midst of a team fight. And the Gnar ultimate's a lot more kind of transparent because all you're doing is jumping in now. But it is just Flash for Flash when you consider the grand scheme of things. So it's nothing too crazy. Next few minutes, fighting's probably not going to be all that active anyway, so both ultimates should be back up for this fight around the Mountain Drake. As you can see, resets coming through from both teams, preparing to set up that Drake. The Ahri and the Gnar coming back to the map right now, trying to get priority on mid lane and bot lane so they can look for that dragon.
And there's DNK looking for a flash in. Artemis is in trouble.
Just almost very dead Artemis. Great Moonlight Vigil with the Severum is going to keep him health high. And Vinboys, when jumping in to try to find him, gets absolutely tanked by that Vigar ultimate. The Event Horizon does nothing to lock anybody else on SPTCE down. That is a Vinboys classic right there. Going down, trying to find that kill into Artemis. Artemis was really low, but had like 400, 500 health because, again, the Moonlight Vigil gives you so much when you hit targets with it. It was able to get out the backside of the fight. Now Cerberus immediately starting up the bear. Great play from Pun to find a big Q against multiple. And the shorted Event Horizon does not matter as Paulette's going to go down as well. It's 2 kills that they found so far. DNK forcing heal out with just a threatened Q as the Baron's still under fire. Drakthar is pretty low. You do have to be a bit careful here if you're that. The Event Horizon popped again, as that's going to allow access for the next 15 seconds or so to the pit if they wanted to. Just try to pick away at the health bars of Cerberus is SPTCE. Event Horizon's going to find DNK. Q's going to pull him back into the rest of the team. Baron buff is dead. That's going to be the Calibrum being able to confirm the kill up against Vi. And with that, Cerberus has taken back control, Tim. As we're not quite done with this engagement yet, TP comes behind everybody else. That's going to be Emperor putting multiple members into the wall. Now Vinboys wants to do additional damage. Nothing is going to tag on Drakthar, so no additional damage is going to get done. And I believe that should be the end of things here for the side of SPTCE, as they're walking up mid-tower with the Baron buff to try to pull this. but do not think that the Dragon is off the board. They could easily walk back at that one if they really, really wanted to. SBTCE just has to watch as Cerberus runs up mid, pulls 2 towers after the Baron, and will walk away with a Dragon prize at the tail end to put them up 3,000 gold. What? Insane flipping going on in this game.
I mean, yeah, I understand what Cerberus, what SPTC was trying to do, and it was really close, right? Artemis was 100 HP away from dying before a lot of the heals came in, and we're sadly not going to be able to see it again. But the big problem was that in the end, Vinboys died for the play, and that really opened up a team fight for Cerberus. And then Emperor doesn't have his Megana here. I can't really go for anything. Again, the cage catching out DNK, making sure that he cannot play the game. And honestly, I have no idea what this turn was, because Dia1 is ulti charming here, and he doesn't have mana. So
Dia1 can't really supply all that much to this team fight. Again, I don't think the idea is particularly bad in this case. We've seen some weird kind of boneheaded stuff from the side of SPTC and Cerberus, but they were trying to jump the Dragon timer to find a pick onto Artemis. They get his flash, they get his Gale Force, they get Huber's ultimate. They got so much, and it's Vinboys just trying to jump in out of nowhere. That ends up costing them quite a bit. If they just hold Vinboys back and they say, okay, don't ultimate, don't burn anything, you'll be fine.
Again, maybe?
Yeah,
no, he actually lives. Flashes bolt.
Oh yeah, ult Flash is able to get Dia1 out of a rough situation. As so far, Cerberus hasn't used the Baron super effectively after that mid push. It is still a 3,000 gold swap over to the side of Cerberus, and that's great. They didn't push bot lane, they didn't push top lane, didn't get much more out of this. So it's not lethal levels of gold difference here between the two teams quite yet.
Yeah, but I think considering the scaling and gameplay of both of these teams, I think we're at the point where I would say Cerberus is outscaling. Wukong, in a lot of situations, if Vi doesn't get great engages, is usually outscaling there. You have Vega, who's obviously outscaling. You have Renata that's outscaling the support Annie in this case, and the Sign is just your solid frontlaner who, yes, in the side lane is going to be struggling against Naru, but who cares because you have a Sign in the front.
Ooh, okay. Bit of utility kind of used right there. Shrelius gets popped for Palette to try to go in on the rest of Cerberus, but couldn't quite find the angle. Doesn't have flash right now. So when the flash is back up, maybe Palette has the ability to go diving into this team, try to find a big Tibbers into multiple members. But until that pops up, Cerberus feels like they've just got complete reigning control of most of these team fights. Not a ton of damage outside of everything else. That's Event Horizon. That means the Banshees is going to go down for Dia1. Just trying to clear the wave as the defense of the tower does not work. Vi is deep behind this team right now. DNK is way in the back. But again, Palette actually does have his flashback. Like I was trying to count for that timer. It looked like it was going to come close, but yeah, now Palette has back. They don't go for the engagement. You can see that they understand like this combination of the Annie and the Vi being able to pincer together onto a team would be a very good combination to set up for Vinboys and Dia1 doing the rest of the damage inside of the fight. So at minimum, you have to keep that threat of issue kind of undermined if you're Cerberus. They are outscaling. Their damage is much better. But there's a legitimate chance of the dive ending up being the death of SPTC Esports here.
Yeah, and Vinboys again going for the Navori Quickblade in the VCS. Somehow everybody is building that, while most other regions have kind of agreed that Infinity Edge does more damage, and they like it better. So I'm interested to see if he really has the damage to carry the team fights, even if he hits his third item. While he, okay, this man has Balls of Steel. He has. That was Vinboys just standing in Draktar's face, just not canceling the recall. I mean, what?
He knows, man. He did not care.
I have no idea, but he had a small shield that saved him in the end. Draktar now engaging DNK. DNK might be in trouble.
Yeah, okay, so DNK is going to be able to sneak out. Palette, with a bit of a stun, did prevent Draktar from getting a ton of additional follow-up with the rest of the Cyclone and with the rest of the damage in general, because that should be... Okay, it's just Cerberus kind of ramping up to try to make a dive under this bottom tower, but they don't have the ultimates to really do anything crazy, as DNK is going to go jumping in. That's Assault Shock Laser going to be used as well, as that's just the nade from DNK. The ultimate from Huber also stops up the rest of the team, as that's going to allow for Pun to find a really solid angle here. Q is going to force out flashes from so many people as Vinboys on the backside, not able to really put out damage quite yet. Now Cerberus is looking a little low, so they have to be careful. Vinboy is going to go jumping forward. Event Horizon gets popped to make sure that there's no additional follow-up from the rest of this team, as that is going to be SPTC losing top tower and losing another member of the squad.
I have a question. Does DNK
Sure.
know how Renata and Vega work?
That's a great
We had this
question.
discussion yesterday
Yeah.
where I was saying they don't have to engage. They have to play it slow. They have to find their angles. Wait for a good engage. And then Uwe told me we're in the VCS. That isn't happening. And yeah, he's still right. Sadly.
Yeah. And I think
Like,
it's
you have to find flanks here. You have to have your Ari specifically on the flank. You have to have your Naur on the flank maybe with a good ultimate. That's the angle where you can play, because Vega Cage does only protect you to one side. The Renata only protects you to one side. You have to find another angle. You have to find another opportunity to come from a flank, because if you don't, you're gonna get run down. Because front to back, there's no way in hell you win.
And now, what seems like out of nowhere, Cerberus is going to be on their third dragon, although they are responding to the Baron instead, which is a legitimate threat. They are a little bit worried that this Baron buff would do quite a bit.
Dia one or two
numbers
if you start hitting this Nash, I'm so angry.
Okay, that's going to be big. That's 3,000 health. That's DNK. Opponent's going to arrive. That's Ari who's going to clean it up. Wow. It got way too low for comfort right there, as I think they smited it and it got down to 50 health with the Scion's W up. It would have been easy enough to actually clean up, but SBTCE does get away with it as they trade Dragon for Baron. That's going to be a bit of swap of gold. Maybe get SBTC back into this game. It was a weird decision from Cerberus. Really, really tough execution from SBTCE, but they lived to fight another day.
I mean, yeah, they got the Nash. I was surprised that they were playing for the Nash and not for the fight, because I feel like it's the best opportunity for you to get that fight. And that's why I was so angry about Dia 1 again not being on the flank. You really do not want to be grouped. This is not the front-to-back comp that you drafted. Vi, Nar, Ari, those want to flank, those want to look for different angles. Let your Annie play, let your Zeri play front-to-back, but the rest of the team needs to be on flanks. And if that doesn't happen, it's going to be a disaster all the way. So I'm gonna be interested to see. So far, I haven't really seen any good flanks from SBTC or other VCS teams. They've not really been too good about finding those angles, and I'm interested to see if maybe SBTC can find it, because if they can't, it's gonna be a really rough one.
It's occurring to me right now as we come into a bit of a break. Have you had tons of competitive experience with Melio yet?
Yes.
Okay, this composition would have been dirty with Melio. Not to say that Renata Glask isn't, but like with the number of angles you have to cover, with the amount of like engage that you can show from different angles. Imagine that you have, because right there, Mikhail's got bot. I'm like, okay, Mikhail's plus ultimate coming through from Melio, plus the disrupt on Vi or Nars, they come jumping. It just seems like so many ways, and I wonder if Huber getting some practice time is partly due to the fact that it's very likely that Alrano P is not playing Melio, and it is very likely that Huber is playing Melio to some extent. So if we get into playoffs 13-7 and that champion's available, maybe they're thinking of playing it. It isn't an enchanter, so it's a very, very long shot that VCS teams are practicing it in general. But if anybody were doing it, you'd think that this would be one of the players that would be doing it the most.
Yeah, I mean, Melio right now is really strung together with the Lucian, specifically. It's basically, imagine Nami gives you rapid fire cannon as well. And you don't only get it for one double auto attack, you get it for 3 seconds.
And imagine that the bubble is also a line skill shot instead of just like a single circle you drop on the grass, so it's a lot less skill intensive to hit. Champion's busted, by the way.
So now we see that SBTC has some map control away. Again, they're trying to keep it, they're trying to keep their vision, and they have to do something, because if this goes to a Drake fight, I think that Cerberus is in a really good position. You have to at least get some flashes, because I think if you get engaged now, get Artemis flash, even if you trade your Vi's life for it, she responds to you before Drake comes up, then you play the Drake and Artemis doesn't have flash. I think that could be an angle here for them to suicide the Vi for Artemis flash.
It would have to be now, though, because you definitely don't want DNK going down much later than this instant, because you want to keep this pushing power as much as possible. And Artemis is off map, so they clearly have some idea of what they want to do, and they need to put down enough pressure onto Artemis to actually break the flash. Because again, if it's just DNK running in, DNK is probably not sufficient of a threat on his own, especially if Renata's hanging around to actually get that one off. Now, on the opposite side, there is no summoner that is currently down here for Cerberus, but there's also none down for SBTCE, which means that, Enper's got flash for this fight. DNK is going to have flash for this fight. Paulette, importantly, is going to have flash for this fight alongside the Shirelias to get into backline. Like, if they were going to find a fight they have enough kind of sufficient pushing power with this Baron buff. They can set up this this jungle, this quadrant that currently DNK is walking into right now, and try to find their big flanking team fight that they have yet to be able to find in this game, because we only have a minute until the third, or the seventh dragon of the game. My apologies, as it could be, or sixth dragon. It is sixth dragon of the game. I'm doubting myself for no reason. As Cerberus wants to grab up this soul point, SPTCE really cannot let that happen.
Yep, and Yado has decided for the cleanse, and I really like the decision, because the only thing that really kills is now or flash any ultimate. So he's decided to also have the cleanse. Artemis has the cleanse, and it's going to be so impossible. Now on bot lane, he might have a flank angle, but all that control that you had just a minute ago is completely gone, and Cerberus has full control, and we can see it here. They're just looking for the SPTC to step in, and SPTC has to now decide what they're going to do. Are they going to run down mid lane? Are they going to try to maybe like even end the game, or are we running in? And Dia1 has decided he's looking to go in, and his Banshee is also already gone.
They do have a pretty decent flank from Enper in the right circumstances. The dragon's been started up by Artemis and Huber. They're going to go running in. Palette has an angle. Enper now has a massive angle on this Gnar. They're going to force down the dragon. It's going to get taken by Artemis, as SPTCE cannot deny it. DNK also getting attacked right now by Drakthar, by Artemis. There's nothing for the rest of the team, though, as DNK is just thrown to the wolves. Vinboy almost gets one shot here by Yado on his lonesome. Artemis almost picks him up on the backside as well afterwards, but just not going to have the damage quite yet, as that is Cerberus finding themselves a Mountain Soul and finding themselves in a much better position in this game, as now DNK is not here for the assisted defense of the rest of their base. It's a question of whether their siege can come through. Two members only just now getting back. Enper might even stay on the split push a little longer. No, he's not going to stay on the split push any longer, because they're just going to hang out and wait, come back to their base, try to make sure that there is no base breaking that Cerberus can accomplish.
And we can see that Cerberus is actually waiting. Who's going to face Shig? Dum. Oh, Palette is not going. Okay.
Nothing.
All Nothing. Right. Sad. But I think they were just waiting for the Nash to spawn, and they're gonna rush it on spawn. And there's nothing really that SPTC can do. They could TP an Emperor, but I don't even think they know what's going on. They didn't even see.
Yeah, they didn't realize that at no point did Cerberus back. I'm guessing what they thought was that Cerberus probably pushed up mid wave, and then they just left, and that's what happened. And so they had space to push up mid, they had space to kind of walk everywhere else, and they weren't expecting that the Baron was going to pop out, even if they were willing to contest, which is already questionable as it is. In fairness, despite the fact that like Baron, is a couple thousand gold normally, that bottom lane push that came through from Enper and that top lane push that actually just got finished up by Dia1 does get the gold to a negative state here. Like there are standing structures that got taken down by SPTCE. So until this Baron buff does something to help set up the rest of the team, to help set up a siege into the base, Cerberus basically is down gold as a result of it. And again, the only structures remaining map are the base structures. So they really have to do some work getting in and setting up their siege around these structures. Not to say that that's not something that's possible for them. Obviously, I think the event horizon has been so filthy. You've got Renata. It should be easy enough for them to make this work. But notably, at least for the moment, it hasn't found any additional benefits. There's no one here to wave clear. Ahri's gone, Nara's gone. They're just going to let him barrel right up mid lane and grab up the inhibitor with no contest at all.
Yeah, but they don't have any side wave, so they either finish on this push, or there's not going to be much happening. But Emperor is already low, has his flash out, doesn't have his Mega Gnar, so he's really in trouble.
Flash. Pun set up on the right side of the fight. That's going to be the Renata ultimate, dodged out completely by the squad. Event Horizon is going to find Dia1 is into the back line. That is going to be DNK, who's going to find something, but the Cyclone is able to disrupt him up. And with that, I think the game is basically just over unless Vinboys can really put on some heroics. So Artemis is ripping him to pieces on this Aphelios, doing some spin moves on top of his opposition right there, as Cerberus has found ways to win. It wasn't the cleanest beginning of the game, but slowly they punished SPTC's mistakes. They collected the gold that was necessary. And Cerberus, who we had seen as faulting even through the beginning minutes of this game, has put it together to take first game against the side of SPTC Esports.
Yeah, and the big thing about them going for this type of team comp is you can't do mistakes as SPTC. On the other hand, you can do mistakes with the team comp that Cerberus has. They just outscale their front-to-back team fight comp. Yeah, SPTC's team comp is better, if you play perfectly. It's this typical LPL team fight, this LPL snowball comp where if you play it perfectly, if you snowball your lanes, if you take your mid jungle on the map and you just make the game unplayable, there's nothing to recover. But the moment you do those mistakes, the moment Cerberus gets to fight back in this game, the game is basically over because you don't have the tools to actually deal with that front to back that Cerberus is bringing. And I think that it just showed that SPTC maybe it's just not good enough yet to really play that perfect style.
Yeah, the difficulty of execution on this composition was more or less what kind of threatened SPTC for the entirety of the game, and so it's not shocking, especially when you have comfort like Yado's Vigar and like Aphelios for Artemis. It felt like that was way too easy for them to accomplish. Even pun on a tank, like that's super common stuff that this team did. This is like bread and butter composition coming out from the side of Cerberus. Hyper carry, is something that has allowed Artemis to play a bit more aggressively. Control mates, it does takes a bunch of space away from the enemy team for Yado. Tank for your top. But like I said, this is about as standard as you can get for Cerberus esports. So SPTC maybe experimenting a little bit, getting a bit more kind of feisty as we walk into playoffs, but clearly does not work against Cerberus here in this game number 1. So we'll see whether or not there's swaps and stuff for game number 2. We're going to take a short break and be back after just a couple minutes. Welcome back, everybody, to our welcome back, everybody, to our the last day of the VCS English here in spring, as we're kicking off our second game of the series between Cerberus and SBTC Esports. After what was a bit of a barn burner between the two of them in our first game, I think me and Tim are really excited to see if we can get some cleanup coming for our second series, especially for two of our guaranteed playoff teams to get some better games in here to start things off.
I mean, honestly, Cerberus minus Draktar was performing pretty well, I think, throughout the game. And on the other hand, I think SBTC minus Emperor was pretty bad. So, yeah, Emperor was pretty alone, sadly, in the game. On the Snar, he really tried to do something, but it's not easy to play Nar in that comp, and when your team starts falling behind and feeding enemy team, it's completely impossible to play, especially if you don't have a gold lead. And I think he really struggled with finding anything.
It would be nice to see this team go back to some of the stuff that was working for them before, like tank junglers and giving Emperor a little bit more agency in terms of damage and some of the stuff that's kind of been textbook SPTC for the entire split. That game, they had a lot more flanking. They had a lot more difficulty of execution. They put a lot into Vin boys, which is a surprise in general that obviously you stepping in over Slater. And so it's not what we have expected from SPTC walking into the end of the split. So we'll see whether or not they change up the roster, whether they change up the draft, or they change up their kind of in-game strategy. I did really like their early game, punishing Drakthar. I thought that was a really genius idea. The DNK kind of executed perfectly with the rest of his team.
Yeah, I mean, the early game definitely was exactly what they wanted. But transitioning from their early game into the mid game and then late game, they really struggled with that, I think. And that's something they have to clean up.
Yeah, the team fight also, it was difficult because of how Cerberus had actually fought in the majority of spaces where it's like, okay, you had a bunch of control from just Yato on one of his best champions. That really did throw quite a bit of an issue. But there were also issues of just like picks going through constantly. How many times did we see right before what should have been a decent situation or right before anything else coming through that somebody on the side of SPTC Esports, again, just out of discipline or out of mispositioning, just gets picked off out of nowhere. And then it's like, okay, we're down a whole member. We can't full 5-on-5 team fight. Part of that is, again, the dive coming through from Vi or some other champion, and then they're too far forward and nobody can follow it. So whether that's execution or whether that's, again, some weirdness coming through from the SPTC camp, I suppose we'll see as we get into game number 2, because, we'll get a bit of difference between the two compositions now.
Yeah, and I think they really have to show. I agree with you. I think they have to change up the draft. I think they have to change up Vinboys. I think he didn't play too poorly. There wasn't really much for him to do, but he definitely wasn't somebody who stood out as doing much, right, of anything. Like he wasn't the main reason they lost, but he wasn't anything to talk about when it came to winning. And I think they need somebody who has the potential to take over games. And I think for all you can say about Slater, I think that's definitely something you can say about him, that he can win you 9 new games, especially on champions like the Zeri.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. And also, given the fact that Cerberus, when they're operating at full power here, like they, again, outside of Drakthar, like you said, I think actively we're giving at least warranted critique after some of the early game and things that had happened from the side of Cerberus. The fact that, like, Yato was really on today, Huber played a decent game, Pun was playing a good game, Artemis had an okay game. Like, the fact that they're playing really, really solid League of Legends across the board did make it difficult as well to have these more standard team fights. And they agree with the assessment, because Slater is back in the lineup as you're getting similar bans to what we saw in the previous game. Obviously not wanting Artemis to go back on that Varus that he was crushing on just a couple days ago. But outside of that, the Rakan taken off the table so that Paulette cannot get that champion at B1.
Yeah, I think that is a good start. And also now DNK having the Wukong, it's not a tank jungler, but it's... Sorry.
You're good.
It's not a tank jungler, but it's definitely team fighting force for him to impact the game. So I think that's a good step in the right direction as well.
Yeah, it's solid. And we're getting quick picks kind of coming through here on both sides. It is the Wukong traded off for the Vi, which I don't know that Drakthar is going to be able to punish the same way the DNK did in the first couple of minutes of the game. So that strategy, we'll see if it comes through. And Ari taken as a blanket pick, protecting the bottom lane of the side of Cerberus here. Again, no information was given away about anything else, but it does mean that like Xayah is going to be available, Zeri is going to be available, kind of whatever bot lane that you want here for the side of SPTCE. Whoever you want Slater to be carrying this game on is probably going to be on the board.
Yeah, and that's interesting to see. In the end, the answer is going to be Xayah, and any of course has a decently good matchup into the Ahri itself, and with Xayah, one of the strongest AD carries, and one that can definitely deal with that Vi. And on the other hand, we see the Seri, nothing really too surprising, just meta picks all around.
Yeah, now, normally, we actually have had our critiques of Zeri for Artemis, because Artemis, when this champion came out, we were expecting to be one of his absolute favorites, because he's one of the best ADCs we have. But one of the biggest issues is that in the same way that Vinboys a couple of times got caught out being overly aggressive, Artemis loves to position aggressively as an AD. He will never refuse to do damage inside of a T-fight out of protection for safety. He's basically the polar opposite of Eddie in that regard. Eddie will always position too defensively. Artemis will always usually position too aggressively and find himself just putting out damage but maybe getting punished for it. And so I think that has been a bit harmful to his Zeri play in a lot of circumstances. So if you go back, again, Artemis we've never really seen as having like a tremendous Zeri compared to some of the other ones inside of the league. So a bit of an opening. Again, I don't think the Zeri's a bad champion, but Artemis, if he's not taking it to its full extent, might have a bit of issue against the side of SPTC, especially not as Slater's back then.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to check, but if it works, he can really carry the game, right? And I think that's something that we have to remember as well, is that he often had to be or has to be the main carry for this team. So this Feast of Famine playstyle is not really too surprising. And Zeri is a champion that can definitely execute that, especially if you dodge a Wukong ulti, for example.
And now you can see mid laners banned out here from the side of Cerberus, and that's a Lulu taken off from Huber. So the Rakan and Lulu are two of the most popular that we've seen alongside the Zeri to kind of close out this season. And the Scion taken away from Pun as well. So they don't want any sort of blanket pick here. They want to be able to grab basically the two best blindable champions for Cerberus in this particular spot, hoping to get some sort of advantage in one of those two lanes before having to blind pick on the side of SPTC here.
Yep. Rumble. The Shanji pick coming out. It is a Rumble probably in the top lane. I don't expect it to go support, even though it could. And excited to see what they can do with this champion, because it's definitely one of the strong ones right now. And we've seen it work in LPL over and over and over again.
And honestly, of the champions that Pun plays that are more damage oriented, this was the first one that we really saw him kind of do really well on, was the Rumble back a couple seasons ago when he was making his debut on the Cerberus roster. This was one of the very limited champions that we were like, okay, wow, Pun is actually playing some solid League of Legends, because at the time he was playing tanks and kind of getting bullied a bit. So it's nice to see a return to form here maybe from that. Now, out of fairness, it is Huber who's a range. We actually make the joke that because Rumble's a melee champion, it should actually be Brown LP playing this if we were going to support. Taki's played it before though, so it's possible scrim blocks that they pick something like this up. As the Cannon is going to get locked here, assuming that it's going to be the Rumble, and then of course the Braum is going to finish things out, as that's going to be pairing alongside the Zeri with nothing else with the support role to grab from Huber.
Yeah, and Braum just all around a good champion, obviously, against the Nautilus, but also against the Ken. You can actually keep the Ken out pretty effectively with the Braum ulti and make sure that he can't really step up.
It's a good, well-rounded composition coming through from the side of Cerberus. I think the biggest difference that they've got as opposed to the composition, because it's looking a lot more similar to what SPTC had, is this Rumble ultimate does so much to be able to cut off the team when you have a flanking Kennen kind of come in out of nowhere. You have all these other members try to join in on team fights. You can break it apart quite a bit with Pun's ultimate if he's playing really good. We have had some criminal Rumble ultimates this season. Our junglers were picking up this champion in like week 4 or something like that. And I have to tell you, I don't think I've actually...
jungle again. Whoa.
Yeah. And so, funny enough, who picked it up first was Drakthar, and he had probably the most criminal Rumble ultimate I've ever seen in my entire life. So hopefully that does not bleed over into this game either.
Honestly, I'm just happy that I wasn't there for that one, because
yes.
That would have made me pretty unhappy. Yeah, I mean, like I heard, like I permanently kind of hear top laner shit talking in recent seasons about junglers picking up top champions. It first happened with the Rumble, when Rumble came into the jungle, and jungle ultimates were special in their own way, and it really took a lot of junglers a lot of time to I guess catch up and really get into it. And on the other hand, yeah, I'm gonna be excited to see what they can really bring now with the Rumble in the top lane. And Wukong was the other one, right? Like where junglers didn't know that you could Q ulti and cancel your Q animation with your ulti. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the next top lane champion in jungle is that top laners can shit talk on.
All right, let's jump into game number 2 here between SBTC Esports and Cerberus. Cerberus is up 1-0, fighting for their lives. Again, in my opinion, I still think that Cerberus, if we were asking around for who had the kind of worst end of the back half of the split, Cerberus, I think, won the majority of their games in the front half of the split, and they do not want to fall into a position that they could be taken up by GAM. So this is the only way to do it. They got to win here, and then they got to win the tiebreaker. Already put themselves in a good position by winning game number 1, but SPTC gets a chance to fight back just a little bit as we kick off our first game. What do you think of the Yordle matchup top lane? You got Kennen going up against the Rumble. We haven't seen these two. I haven't seen these two paired against one another very specifically recently. It's been a couple of seasons since these two have been in the meta at roughly the same time to be able to get this type of view.
I'm actually not really sure either. I haven't seen that matchup specifically. I'm guessing that Rumble can force out the Kennen early, but once Kennen gets some levels in, he can really poke him out with Q. I think that matchup changes massively if the Kennen should go attack speed, which he doesn't go because, I mean, he has Airy. So I'm expecting that he should go the normal item build.
Yeah, it's weird because we've seen 3 very distinctive builds here inside of the VCS for the Rumble, which is the Airy with like usually it's Rocket Belt because you want to be able to team fight really effectively, and the Airy also helps out with poking in the lane phase. You got Conqueror, which is a bit more of the attack speed build. You also go Rift Maker, and usually it's a tank buster is how I see it used more often than not. And then of course there is the famous Kiaya Heartsteel, which got used before LCK did it, which was really awesome. Which honestly I don't think would have gone too badly in a game like this where you could get stacks up against the Rumble at the beginning of the game. But of those builds, obviously Emperor has decided, hey, the laning phase probably not going to be all that important. The Kennen ultimate and being able to team fight with it effectively is going to be a lot more important, so we're going to stick with that strategy.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to be interested to see if we see any early aggression from either of these teams, because Vi and Wukong are usually 2 champions that really like to just play it slow, play controlled, and we might see a lot of pressure though around that level 6 power spike, because especially Diabon and Yado can also help out. Ari and Annie, probably 2 of the best playmaking level 6 champions to just lock somebody down and make sure they die.
Yes, I believe our producer's also asleep at the wheel. Okay, there he is. I was worried that Spoods had gone to sleep or something like that because we're all exhausted right now, and we were going to end up sitting and watching some of the VCS casters for some time, as it looks like we went into a bit of a pause. It's also been a while since I've seen like pure unadulterated carries up in the top lane that warrant some jungle pressure, and both junglers have actually decided to path from bot to top. I remember the beginning of the season, I'm pretty sure everybody was like, oh yeah, it's just a path to bot angle over and over again. We're playing for bot lane. This is the first time I think I've seen both junglers say, hey, let's go top. We got the Rumble and the Kennen there to play for.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy place and up in top lane, definitely. But I mean, I've seen a lot of those top lane matchups recently, just because if we watch LPL, you have like a half a dozen insane carry top laners that usually take over the game there. So I've seen quite a bit of Kennen, I've seen quite a bit of Rumble, just not against each other currently too often.
And obviously, we haven't stepped into the game too heavily, but if we rewind and you think about the compositions here for a minute, I mean, where are you giving breakpoints for these 2 teams? Like, who are you expecting pressure from Vi and from Wukong in order to grab up in this particular late game?
Especially around that level 6 spike on basically every position is where I'm expecting stuff to happen, because you have great level 6. You basically have insane ultimates on the entire top side for everybody. You have Rumble Kennen on top lane, you have Wukong Vi in the jungle, and you have any Ahri on mid lane. All those champions basically rely on their ultimate winning games and just taking over. So I'm expecting that we see a lot of party around that level 6 power spike.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see when things kind of break loose for themselves, whether or not if SPTCE or Cerberus kind of make a more aggressive move before that. Because once we hit level 6, you got a lot of really fun ultimates to use on both sides for big team fighting and for everything else. So if we get a quiet early game, some of the early, maybe second dragon, maybe Rift Herald, things like that will start to be a lot more competitive. Because both teams are going to want to jump off and use these big ticket ultimates to try to find some kind of effect. I'm not sure if our producer has any sort of update on this. I might be willing to throw this to a break if he's ready for it, just so that we don't have to sit here and continue rambling about everything else. I mean, our first game, this is actually crazy. I don't remember. I haven't been a part of a break for some time. I don't want to jinx us super crazy here today, but usually this has actually been a better split. Our VCS has been so much better about doing broadcasts. So this must be a well warranted break for one of the two teams to need this much time.
Yes. I mean, it's also that they're back on stage, right? So before, and specifically the past 2 years, they were playing from their gaming houses. So I think there was a lot of more stress involved because technical issues couldn't be resolved immediately. Somebody had to be at the gaming house, maybe resolve it there, and a lot more trouble all around in most leagues. But now being back on stage, I think they can definitely do it better. But I think with that, we're giving into a small pause. And once the technical issues have been resolved, we're back for you with game number 2.
Oh, okay, no break. Yeah, okay. We were expecting a lot longer. Again, we've kind of been ties over the last few seasons into believing that breaks are going to take like an hour and a half. We've had that happen before, so a solution getting found. Again, props to VCS making sure that we don't have to wait 100 years as we get a bit of scrap between BNK and Drakthar around this top scuttle. Here we go.
Yeah, and here it comes to play what you said last game already. Once that Wukong hits the level 3, the Vi can't really fight him in the 1v1, so DNK winning out on that trade, not being invaded level 2, and that means he gets the first grab, and he should probably also get the second grab because his bot lane holds the priority there as well.
Yeah, should be easy enough for DNK to kind of clean up quite a bit. In fact, actually, it was Paulette who ended up, I think, my apologies. He was covering up the scuttle, and I thought it was taken. I thought Paulette just like went up and Chad grabbed it. His Nautilus is like, I need this gold anyway, not letting it go to anybody else. But instead, it's going to be forced to DNK, who's going to double scuttle. Notably, Vi is actually up, taking Gromp, I believe, from the side of DNK. I was wondering if maybe a dive could come through, but I think he's a little bit too low health to actually make that happen with Pun, unless he like flash queued over top of the wall to find the cannon.
Yeah, he's also spotted and now, so Emperor should know that there's something coming. The wave is really bad for him though, so they could be still looking for this. Emperor though playing it really slowly. And Draxtar's getting chunked out, so Pun is flashing.
That was okay. It's actually really good understanding of damage right there from everybody. Pun thought he had the damage. Emperor just barely doesn't die. Had to pop both charges of the pot just to make sure that the healing would come through. His wave is going to shove back towards him, which either buys Pun a lot of space to poke under the tower or going to buy him a back is into bot lane. And again, another ward. All right, Nautilus Hook does snag up Artemis. It's not going to lead to anything else as there's no follow-up from DNK, but a little bit of ganks traded back and forth. Nothing super heavy hits though.
Yeah, I mean, so far we see a lot of fighting, not really a lot of killing. And I mean, Pun tried it with Ignite, of course, that you're playing on that Rumble. I'm going to be excited to see if Pun is Shanji and just ends up being level 5 bot for no reason. Because that's how I feel about Rumble, right? What you kind of not have to do, but I feel like where Rumble really excels is when you randomly just appear in bot for no reason. It's what I'm used to, so I'm excited to see if Pun can also do that.
Yeah, when you're a champion with as much damage loaded into the kit as what Rumble has, it's always nice to be able to find other members that can provide some kind of CC and just join them in some capacity. So if you could ever link up with Drakthar or even Huber, that would be a fantastic boon to be able to utilize some of this Rumble damage. Especially when you hit the level 6 mark, you can keep them locked down on that equalizer and things like that. But even the Flame Spitter, the harpoons as well, the ridiculous penetration you get from hitting a target with both of those makes you just such a devious threat at the beginning of the game. It would be nice to see, but for now, we'll stay in lanes. Again, our expectation that level 6 will be hit before anything kind of crazy goes on is still standing true. As Slater begins to bully up against Huber and Artemis at the beginning of this one, ganked into the top lane is going to be Pun going down. Equalizer gets dropped directly on top of these two members. As DNK is actually taking a ridiculous amount of damage. Here, First Blood goes over to Pun. That's Emperor having to flash afterwards with the E to be able to grab something. Now Slicing Maelstrom's going to be able to dump into the wave, grab anything as long as Emperor doesn't die, but Drakthar can't really chase any further. Because of that, Emperor should be able to help push this wave back a little further. Just a 1-for-1, but again, Pun, all the damage in the world.
Yeah, really interesting to see that both top laners actually turned it when the enemy jungle arrived, and now it ends up being 1-for-1. Both top laners get the kill, and here we can see, look back, DNK basically has to use everything to get close to Pun, and now Pun can get just ulti overload and then get his Q out, and DNK ends up dying on the back end. And Emperor also has to flash because he can't get too close, and in the end, Draktar can't finish him off.
Yeah, I like the little kind of throw in there that Pun during the equalizer while it was dropping actually tagged the second Electro Harpoon, which means that the first tick didn't get all the penetration, but every other tick of equalizer did, and the slow lasted through the first couple seconds, which probably led to a lot more equalizer damage than DNK was expecting. So again, expertise of the champion, or at least a little bit more expertise than we're normally accustomed to on some of these damage carries by Pun on this Rumble. Already looking up as having the first blood, having a bit of CS advantage. Now DNK is going to continue to punish him as he's a little bit angry about what happened before. Pun is just running at Enper, though, as he's overheated. Now he can turn on to DNK. The first Electro, there's the second Electro Harpoon. That's going to be the Cyclone Pop to try to put some additional damage down. Pun is now overheated. He's not going to have support. It's Dio1 who comes in out of nowhere, and that should be a dead Pun right there. But another 1-for-1 trade by Pun in the top lane.
This man, personally, I think learned the champion from Shanji, because that's the only player that I can remember doing that in top lane consistently, just being ganked, not caring, killing everybody. And I think that's the Giga Chat Rumble mindset, while DNK is, I think, dying.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a bring down. That's Drakthar and Yato immediately after that gank into the top lane, or finding a kind of rubber band kill where there's DNK's on the map just a little bit too long. Rift Herald's also going to get taken off the back of it too, which is a really nice play. Again, they've got their support. Rumble's going to be back on the map, going to have Equalizer. You can't really challenge here. Dio1 could step up to the plate, but again, Yato's around. And there's two members that were in mid as Artemis gets dove underneath the bottom tower. Now Slater, the question is, can you actually get something? He's going to be able to ultimate and flash out so that he doesn't take tower aggro. Really well juggled by he and Paulette right there as the bot dive works.
Yeah, and at the same time, now we see Pan in the bot lane. I wanted to see him in the bot, and he ends up getting the first kill for sure. Paulette, the question is, does Yuba get him, or does Paulette get to walk out? There's a Rumble coming. There's a TP coming. I think Paulette is dead.
Yes, I believe so as well. Let's just see who gets it. That's going to be the Electro Harpoon, and Yato's going to grab it up with the Charm. So again, originally it was Huber and Pun. My apologies, that were both in mid lane, and I was thinking they were going to go up and they were going to try to fund for the Rift Herald, but instead they give up the Rift Herald and they make the bot dive happen, or the bot play happen in response to the bot dive. As Cerberus does pick up 2 kills in response to that Rift Herald going down, as Emperor is going to walk face first into Pun. Slicing Maelstrom is going to get popped. Sorry, right in the middle of that fight too. Doesn't look like there's gonna be enough damage. I spoke way too soon. I was like, okay, he's got like 700 health left. He's perfectly fine. I forgot completely that the overloaded Q alongside the double Electro Harpoons is just too much to deal with.
Yeah, but the thing is, he has MR boot, so that's completely fair. That's too big of a damage item. I mean, in the end, the MR boot's just really helping him out, making sure that he can't be one-shot by Emperor on the other side. And I mean, Pan is putting on a masterclass on this Rumble, and he's just, I'm excited to see if that keeps on giving, because that might just be the 2-0 for Cerberus if he keeps on playing this way.
Ooh, okay. Bit of a hook around the corner does find Huber. Brom's going to be able to jump backwards, but there's support from DNK and Slater here to try to put some damage into Artemis. Not able to get in. Yeah, it's really shocking to me. Whenever I see Rumble mains, I feel like even when their champion is strong, they just don't play it that often, which is crazy to me because, again, when this champion's played to perfection, it does so much work. As Drakthar and Yato hovering around in mid lane, there's support from Huber as well. Artemis is just cleaning up the bot wave. It looked like they were trying to contest the dragon to some extent, but it's going to be a minute until they can really get into the river. There's too much push in mid and too much control by the side of SPTC's players to actually give up this river. So waiting is something is likely to spark. That's going to be Tibbers dropped on top of Yata. Not enough damage. There's TNK popping the Cyclone directly onto Drakthar, as this is a really strange fight coming out here. Nobody going down quite yet. Huber's dropped. Drakthar's dropped. Yato's dropped. Artemis is fine, but Ultimate's burnt here from the side of SPTC, as Dragon might be on the table for them, but...
I mean, they can maybe look for that Drake, but they're not looking to do so. And I think Pan is looking for a top lane. He's looking for Pikachu. Pikachu's dead, I think.
Maybe.
I mean, he does have Flash.
Yeah, he's got Flash. He's going to have to find a sneaky way to get out of this. Equalizer's not perfect, as the Slicing Maelstrom once again is going to come out. Yeah, he's just got too much damage. What are you supposed to do? Pun does have to wait through the overcool. Emperor's going to get the stun down. Oh, just barely outside this Flame Splitter range. And because of that, that means that Pun is not going to find the damage, not going to find lethal. Does burn the ultimate and the flash, as Dragon on the other side of the map does go down here for SPTC Esports.
Yeah, well played there from Emperor, being able to get out of that, not giving up another solo kill. Already gave up 2, doesn't want to have a 3rd, and now the hook from Paulette.
And Drakthar probably dies, unless he's able to sneak out with that smite. There we go. Okay, yeah. And DNK decides to W flash forward just to make sure that the kill goes down on Drakthar. As traded back a little bit again without the kill on top side, actually ends up being about 1,000 gold advantage in the first dragon of the game, going into the side of SPTCE. As Artemis and Huber fancy themselves a bit of an invade. I was thinking they were going to go invading to try to find DNK, but don't end up full committing to that idea.
No, and if we look at both team comps who does outskating, I think it is a pretty close affair. I think Zeri on the one hand, of course, is a great skating champion, but Wukong can I feel like have a bit of an easier AoE comp for the side of SPTC. So I think both teams can definitely win late game team fights. I think it's so much easier to play for SPTC this time, where they have those big AoE ultimates.
Oh my goodness. Pun is refusing to allow Enper to play this game in the slightest, as he's doing his best Enper performance. That's got to be at least the second solo kill of the game. If not, there are more, because I think he had one earlier when there were 2 people inside of the fight. So I think Pun's on 3 solo kills right now inside of this game on the Rumble. He is just smashing. This is the X factor that Cerberus has been missing for such a long time. I remember when they won their Mickey Mouse split, one of the biggest things that they had going for them was that Pun was kind of just gapping other top laners on like Mundo and on Tom Kench and these other weird tanks. And while he's never quite recaptured that magic, I'm starting to get senses of it on this Rumble here. Oh, what happened to Annie? It's like a gank happened mid lane, and
yeah. We didn't see, but there's another kill for Ari, so I'm guessing that Ari somehow managed to get that, and
let's see.
Now we can see it. There's no jungler here, or nope. They start tough flying in. Yado hits the charm. Perfect charm. That was wonderful.
Yeah, great execution by Yado. Oh, actually into the backline. There's DNK making a play happen for the bottom lane. While the 2 solo lanes have actually gone not great, DNK turning his focus down towards the one winning place that SPTC has had basically all game, is the Xayah and this Nautilus combination have done such good work. That's first tower here for Slater, as this is the person we were looking to kind of step up for the side of SPTC Esports. Not everything's working perfectly. Again, not only the kill on Yado, but a couple of kills on Pun. But bottom lane has certainly been in a losing situation basically all game long, as Slater's getting run at by Pun. This time the minions are going to block for him, though. Yes,
and all around, Slater doesn't have an easy game, because there's a insanely fed Rumble on the other side, and now we can see again what happened in bot lane. They just got baited wonderfully by Slater, and both DNK were there. DNK and Palette were there to cover him. Double kill for the Xayah, but again, the Xayah doesn't have an easy game. There's a lot of dive, there's a lot of potential to just shut him down.
Yeah, it's a pretty decent gold lead at the beginning of this one, and a lot of that's going to be into Slater. So shutting out Slater is going to become a #1 goal here for Cerberus, between not only like Drakthar and Yado for diving, but also, again, Pun, and the ultimate placement. Being able to drive Slater out of fights is going to be something to pay attention to drastically, as we're starting to break into teamfight territory. We're at 14 kills already, which is kind of crazy, but I'm guessing teamfighting is going to ramp up here, because, again, at some point, these big ticket ultimates are going to want to be used on more than like one person at a time, right, Tim?
Yeah, usually you want to use them on multiple people. That's kind of how AoE big ultimates work. As Enper picks up his first item, probably a bit behind Pun there. But I expect that SPTC isn't really going to look for any of those big fights before the second item, the Navori Quick Blades, comes in for Slade in the bot.
Yes, a very, very quick one for Slater after the Gale Force is completed. So accelerated very, very heavily on the Xayah. It does make this a lot easier to kind of manage. As Drakthar is going to drop Rift Herald in the top lane, give some gold over to Yado, and continue getting some threat. Bot lane is actually being pressured right now, but the side of SPTC, they're choked up to this side, the inner tower on the bottom side, which could lead to quite a bit, but there's no defense here on the top side. Enper's the only one within striking distance to be able to come over here and respond to it. Notably, Paulette has joined him over here as well.
As we see a 3-man push in the top lane. And that probably means that Drake is going over to SPTC, but it's only Cloud Drake, so I think for Cerberus, just trading gold for that is very strong. But on the other hand, SPTC taking mid turret is really important, because that means they can open up the map, and they need vision. They need flank board for the cannon. They need good vision to get a flash any Tibbers in, and I think that's so important to break that tier 1 turret, to get that vision into the enemy jungle and to be able to actually dominate the map.
Yeah, taking away more information and taking away more space to be able to generate these big ticket team fights for the side of SPTCE is going to be necessary, especially because after the early game that was kind of exposed by Enper, getting good flank angles for the cannon is going to be all the more necessary just to make sure that the ultimate's going to have some sort of impact. Can't go rushing in through the front by any standard at all, given just how far behind that he is. And SPTCE, they're only at 1,000 gold. They did give up that inner tower, which equalized things a little bit more. But 2 dragons buys them space to be able to get into a little bit later item territory. They're going to lose mid tower, which should equalize the gold even more. But at minimum, they're within kind of close striking distance. Again, the big things are that Yato, Pun, both feeling great inside of this game, versus Slater, who has to be a kind of shining star here for SBTCE to carry them through some of the team fights. I suppose the Annie's not completely dead in the water quite yet either, because she's got some decent damage. It's just you have to be very, very cautious with the way you approach with this team from Cerberus.
One thing that is really interesting is that we see Annie actually going for the full burst build here, which I really do not like from DR1, because you see on the other side you already have Banshees, you have two MR boots, so there's a lot of MR just coming in because you have the cannon as well, because you have so much CC. So I'm just asking myself, why not Rod of Ages? Why not be that like utility Annie together with the cannon? You're gonna have enough AP damage anyways, even though he's behind. It doesn't really matter, and you're actually useful champion. And in this case, you're just asking for more MR on an enemy team.
I think the only thing I can come up with is that Pun is going to be, if Pun's ultimate isn't inside a team fight, you have to be a lot closer, which means Annie should have access to being able to dump damage into Pun. And maybe the thought is, if he doesn't build a bunch more defense, doesn't build a bunch more MR, maybe you can kind of one-tap Pun and keep him out of a fight to ensure everything else. Again, I think that's hopeful more than anything else. And I agree with you. I think Rod, even Leandries probably wouldn't have been a terrible build path in a game like this. But they're trying something. They're trying to make sure that some of these frontliners are going to feel a lot more afraid for their life if they come jumping forward willy-nilly, as Dia1 with this Ludens will have a bunch of damage into the single target, basically no matter what the circumstance. Top tower traded for bot tower, feeling a lot more like a Season 5 game where we're just trading structures back and forth to make sure that both teams have a bunch of gold to work with. Rumble was also super popular during that season, so we are getting a real flashback to Season 5.
Yeah, both teams kind of watching each other. We saw some early aggression, of course, from both teams coming out. SPTC now actually having the gold lead back, and specifically Slater's feeling so good, but it's all gonna be about those Pun ultimates, because playing an immobile AD carry as Xayah, even if you have the Gated Force, even if you have the ultimate, into Rumble ultimate is gonna be really hard to do, especially if Vi baits the Xayah ultimate and then the Rumble ultimate comes down afterwards, and it's completely unplayable.
What is astonishing to me is that both these top laners have done a piss poor job at farming in this game. Look at the farm on the. I was like, why in the world are we only just now passing 2 items as Pun? He's got like 5 kills in this game. It's because he's got 134 CS. Where's the CS gone, Tim?
I mean, he's playing that roaming Rumble style. It's just He forgot to farm as well. Yeah, I mean. That usually tells you that he isn't too proficient on this Rumble, or like the style of Rumble that he's playing, right? Because like he hasn't figured out the perfect timers yet where he can roam without losing massively. And so usually you wanna, like, you're on those champions, you're gonna lose CS, like you're gonna fall behind comparatively. So I wouldn't have been surprised if it was at 170, 180 CS. I think that would have been more reasonable. Just having those 30 CS more could make all the difference. I mean, 30 CS is what, like 1.5 kills roundabout? So
something like that, yeah.
A lot of gold. Emperor is in trouble.
Yes, Slicing Maelstrom's available. He's not even going to get it off before he ends up going down to Yato and Drakthars. This is that dive set that you were alluding to earlier. The potential, this is something that Slater has to be terrified of. Now, in fairness, Emperor doesn't have those defensive tools up and going yet, like the Gale Force, like the Flash. I guess the Flash was there. But that's a very clear indication of what they're capable of doing in a very quick manner to somebody who does not end up getting any of the defensive tools off.
Yeah, now we see third Drake coming around. Cerberus is still down both Yados and Draktar's ultimate right now. They should have them up for the Drake itself, but that means there's like a low phase right now that SPTC can use to set up some vision, to set up control, and to make sure that Cerberus has to phase check into darkness, and that is so hard to do. Palette, DR1, DNK, and the cannon have great angles into that darkness to just find big engages, find AoE, and then run them down.
Okay. third dragon now. Infernal Soul also up on the board is a terrifying dragon to give away to either team. You think about what a Rumble can do with an Infernal Soul. Think about what these two ADCs are going to be able to do with Infernal Soul. There's so much damage in this game that this is just a disgusting Drake to have as our kind of our trade back and forth. Gold basically dead even, both positioned in the midst of the river. This is the fight we've been looking for, Tim. Let's see what we've got between these two teams, as the dragon is going to be dropped to half health. Emperor's looking on a very deep flank angle up around the top side of Cerberus. Available is basically everything for both squads. We're going to get a chance. That's going to be a jump in, hook through the middle, trying to find something. That's an insane equalizer to drive out the ultimate from Slater, as that's a 1 kill onto Dia1, but there's so many members in the backline. Emperor did so much with his slicing Maelstrom. Dragon is going to get taken up by Cerberus, as the fight afterwards is just all Cerberus as well. It looked like there was some excitement there. It looked like there was enough damage done by Emperor, but they could just never get Slater in position.
I mean, the problem is that Emperor is playing into so much MR that he's legit not doing any damage whatsoever. I mean, he went in there, I think he had a 4-man ultimate, 4-man stun to make sure the enemy team couldn't move, but it didn't matter because he doesn't have any damage. He's not killing anybody, and that just means that in the end, he basically just uses his SSC bot, and if you have to use a cannon as a SSC bot, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, even worse also, I think, if we get the replay, you're going to see Dia1 basically got 100 to 0'd with no chance of stepping up to do any damage against the side of Cerberus. Let's see if we can track that. Yep, there's the Braum, there's the ultimate, there's the equalizer, there's the Vi ultimate. Unfortunately, Dia1 didn't get to play the game. And again, Slater got shoved out. The equalizer kept him so far away from all the action that there's just no additional damage. Played perfectly by the side of Cerberus. Again, outside of the Emperor ultimate, doing quite a bit of disruption. Honestly, really well played from them, grabbing up the dragon as well.
Yeah, and that's the issue with this Dia1 item build. If he builds more tanky, then he might be able to survive that initial engage, get his Tibbers out, be a utility for his team, but in the end, he is nothing, and then Slater can't play because of it. Because if you build space as any, then suddenly Slater gets a few alternatives off. Suddenly Slater gets to get his feathers back, and suddenly you have a lot of damage to take down single targets, but in this case, the Annie is just dead, Slater doesn't get space, and Emperor is basically useless.
Yeah, it's a tough place to be if you're SBTC Esports. Again, slowly the items trickling in will make this team fight quite a bit more kind of potent, but it's a question of whether Cerberus are just going to beat them there, because they're already potent with a lot of the team fighting tools. Not to mention the Infernal Dragon going over on its own is just going to be valuable for the additional damage, and you've got potentially 3 more of those to go over to Cerberus to really clean up this game. You have to make sure that they are shut out for the rest. If you're SBTCE, the more damage that this squad's going to have, the harder this is going to get. Equalizer cuts off DNK and Emperor a little bit, but it's just Yada who should be able to pick up the tower for free with this Baron buff in mid lane. The shove's going to continue as well to try to pull additional structures off the board, keep the Cerberus lead even higher. Slater just steps up to the plate right against Trakthar and says, I'm going to auto you nearly to death. As Hugh gets caught out by the Nautilus hook. That's going to be the Annie. That's one just dead. Pun also in a really horrid position to actually get out of a bad situation. Emperor comes TPing in to try to make this into a fight. DNK is going to get a 700 gold shutdown. Now Drakthar goes in. The slicing Maelstrom going to be close enough to maybe get a stun down. You have to be really careful. Artemis is a huge ultimate here to potentially find some additional damage. Drakthar doesn't quite go down as the others continue to rain in from Artemis, who flashes in, but he's not quite going to be able to find anything as SPTCE just walk away with a couple of kills. That was almost disgusting. Artemis almost cleans 5. But fortunately, no one goes down.
Yeah, Artemis just not having the damage yet to really shut anybody down and not being able to pick up those kills. But small mistakes here from Cerberus, just overstepping a bit. First Huba getting caught, then Pun trying to help. And then it's one by one Cerberus running in. And only the gold they really have on their members is saving them here. One thing I wanted to say is that, funnily enough, it's actually completely fine that Artemis doesn't really have the kills, doesn't really have the gold, because this game isn't about the AD carries. It's mostly about the top lane. It's mostly about Emperor and Pun finding good ultimates. It's about the junglers finding good engages. And it's about the mid laners finding that follow-up, finding the CC. And then the AD carries will just follow up, right? They, at some point, both of them will have their items, and Artemis just finding the items in the long run now is completely fine. And we might, for the first time, either see him going BT now, or he is actually doing something smart and going for Infinity Edge.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate because we've got a Caulfield just kind of sitting in the inventory that's looming. That just it's taunting us with that very, very likely to be Navori quick blades. But if Infinity
Yeah.
Edge gets dropped here, Artemis with an Infinity Edge in that last fight probably kills everybody or comes very damn near close to killing every single member.
To be fair, he probably also kills everybody if he has
With
enough
Bloodthirster. Yeah, that's fair. Or any other.
I think any solid third item is gonna win them this team fight. There, it was a little damage that was missing, and on the other hand, Slater has his 3 items now as well. But I can't really see him auto taking. Honestly, I think he legit doesn't get to auto take in this game. And it has to be somebody on his team stepping up, finding a catch, maybe on Artemis. He doesn't have flash. He doesn't have cleanse. He's vulnerable right now. Maybe you kill the Artemis right here.
Equalizer dumps the wave, which is the full intention. They were trying to prevent the mid tower from going down, but that is an ultimate burnt. Rumble's ultimate is notoriously low cooldown around this dragon, so he might have it up before if they can stall just for a little bit of time. But they're going to turn. They have to fight for this. I don't like them giving away Infernal Dragons. I know it's a bit of gold back. I don't know, maybe you could chime in on this again. If they go without fighting, especially, I really, really don't like the call. Is they're going to try to cut off Cerberus from the rest of their base. That should be an escape angle, but now Cerberus potentially give a mid-control, although the wave being gone does mean that it's not going to be that punishing here. There's no inhibitor kind of threat. So again, Infernal versus mid-tower, tell me what your thoughts are, because I'm really, really not liking the trade for SBTCE.
I mean, they felt like they couldn't fight right now, which is true. I think they can't fight it, and they're not outscaling in traditional sense, I think, but they definitely can catch up in items, but it's going to take a lot of time, and I think it's time they don't have. So, yeah, I think fighting at this point could have been an angle, but they didn't have the vision, they didn't have the setup, so I understand why they're really scared to walk in, because it seems near impossible to walk into that enemy team comp, especially if you have no vision, and as that, at least you didn't lose the game.
Yeah, maybe a catch-22 where it's like, okay, we could either go in and, potentially give up the Infernal Dragon, maybe get a fight win, maybe it's more of a coin flip if you go in, as Yado actually just probably going to die. Yeah, he just gets absolutely eviscerated by DNK and Slater. As slowly, Slater has continued to collect gold in this game. Like you said, maybe the 1v5 angle. That's a lot of members of Cerberus who showed up to fight, as that's going to be an ultimate. That's a Featherstorm dropped in the way of a lot of members. DNK was able to get out as well, as Drakthar was able to pull an ultimate, but now the reinforce from DO1 is going to drop a ton of damage into the rest of the team. Can Slater step forward? Can Slater fight? DNK tries to punch forward, tries to get something. Paulette also readily available, but nobody else from the side of this team is able to get anything. I almost wanted Emperor to come TPing in and find a slicing Maelstrom. I feel like that could have been a 1v5 angle for Emperor on the backline, as they are going to force Cerberus into a tough call. Pun is on the bottom side of the map. No TP to join this fight. Huber's low health. Only Drakthar can try to steal this at this point, as Artemis is also going to be relatively low. Paulette just has to be here. DL1's also going to be here to try to zone out members, make sure that nobody's going to show up at the right time. And SPTCE, get back on the Baron, please. Stop looking for the fight. Emperor's got it. Please, just kill the Baron and walk away. They're going to be able to do that, as the chickens find something back to. They finally get a fight. They finally get a Baron, and they're going to get a gold advantage back for themselves somehow.
The chickens get the huge purple chicken, take it down, and now have its buff, its powerful a buff for themselves. And it was a good fight, and it was kind of a follow-up to this Nash play, because they use to this Drake play, because they used that timer that Cerberus was grouped on the Drake to get into topside jungle, get the catch onto Yado, and snowball that into a fight, followed up by the Nash itself. So still, Slater in a great position, now has the BT as well, so a bit more sustain, a bit more survivability to his name. But we could really see in that top fight how hard it is for him to play. Pun's ultimate comes out, he has to ulti, and then instant VQ ulti to follow him up and to make sure that he isn't able to do anything.
Yeah, it's slowly over the course of this game, itemization is getting better and better for SPTC Esports. It's 4 items on Slater, who, like you said, I don't think could auto. Wow, that was just off screen, and DL1 just gets wrecked by Cerberus, who again 5-stack in the top side to try to make something happen. Equalizer's going to try to prevent Paulette from doing anything, as they're going to look for the members that don't have defensive tools. Usually it'd be Slater, you'd think, as Yado's going to take some auto-attacking damage. Featherpool's not going to get it. Galeforce not going to find anything either, as that's going to be the ultimate burn from Slater, but he doesn't have the Featherpool anytime soon. DNK is going to come in with a Cyclone, ripping through the rest of his team, trying to find something, but he just doesn't have the damage to full top and carry. This Pun is not going to go down, and that's going to be that. Emperor can't join that fight. He TP'd in the last one as Cerberus. They find a full engagement in the top side of the map out of nowhere and get their gold back.
And Slater and Paulette lose their mind, go in 2v5, try to fight it, and I don't understand why, because You're out. Just walk away.
Yeah.
You might lose your DR1, but that's fine. I mean, he inted, let the inter die, and then
Mhm.
I understand that they want to turn it because they see an angle where Rumble ulti's out, but I think they didn't expect everybody to be there. I think they kind of didn't expect Artemis to follow up to be there as well, and then it was a 2v4, which honestly, without Rumble ulti, without Vi ulti, I think up, sounds more playable, I guess, and we'll have to see how DR1 died again. I mean, yeah, he got just jumped on by everybody.
He's just a criminal for autoing that ward. We can literally see the Braum on top of it. But this was the more confusing part, because if DNK gets here in time, it feels like the combination of the Cyclone with Slater's ultimate actually might have been enough. I love the attempt on Yato at least a little bit if they were going for the fight. But again, it's just out of the timer of... Again, watch the Cyclone. The Cyclone goes crazy here, actually does quite a bit. If you get a Featherstorm on top of it, they might actually just straight up win this 3v5. But it was just mistimed by a bit of time.
I also think that is a huge mistake from Slater, actually, because I think if he ults and then Gale Forces away, or I think he Gale Forced in and ulted then, right?
Yeah.
If he just Gale Forces away, buys time for DNK to play this. But because he Gale Forced in, he put himself in a really shit position. He, in the end, got just run down. And if he doesn't grieve for Yado, they might be actually able to play that fight.
And instead, again, it's SPTCE, I think, just looking for any kind of straws that they can grasp. And in this particular case, weren't able to. Slater is able to start up the Dragon and get some damage down on a Drakthar, as the Dragon's going to get pulled. Both teams here in the pit. Emperor finally arrived as well. Zenper has not been in like a single team fight for the last few minutes. Gets chunked by Yato. Is going to burn the Banshees. But now Emperor is going to have to be a lot more fearful about being able to go in onto the backline. Equalizer's great to split DL1 off from the rest of the team. Emperor's down to 25% health. Down to 20% health, and Yato has just driven him completely out of the fight, and now Emperor, he's going to have to TP back in. See if he's going to be able to kind of be around.
He has a water blue buff.
He does. That's going to be Drakthar going in. Drakthar is going to be able to help find a kills. A lot of the damage is going to be able to do quite a bit. Pun is going to have to Zonius out of that, as Emperor's going to flash in with a Slicing Maelstrom. Going to find damage onto Hubert, but that's the only person that they get a bunch of damage into. And now SPTCE, can they actually step up? They are not going to be able to stop the Dragon, I don't think. And just like that, it is a 1-for-1, but 3 Dragons to Cerberus Infernal Drakes are not something you want to be giving up at this point.
Absolutely not. I think they are biting themselves right now. It looks so unplayable for them. Slater's just watching the game run away from him. He can't play the game. He legit cannot play it. And this time Rumble didn't even ult him, and he couldn't play. So it looks so unplayable. I'm not sure how do you get into this game. I think if Emperor was in a position to really carry, if he had gone ahead early, if Pun hadn't been this fed, I think there would have been a good shot for them to win the game through the AoE. But right now, Slater can't play, Emperor can't play, Pun is God, and the Vi and Arya are doing so much work as well.
It also feels like, again, when do you pull the trigger if you're SPTCE? You have abilities like Cyclone on DNK, you have Flash on DO1, you have Nautilus who can kind of go in, had Flash at the beginning of that fight, to set up Kennen ulting into the backline when he had a flank angle. Instead, they were just kind of bottlenecked at the front of Dragon, and Yato was able to chip out Emperor, so that Emperor had to TP back in a worse position than what he had. He had to run through the front just to find some kind of damage against this squad. Again, it's just SPTCE not able to make the decision necessary to kind of win out the fight. The goal doesn't look very different, but again, 3 Infernal Souls is way too much for Cerberus to have at this point in the game. SPTCE are never going to be able to respond to this damage.
They absolutely are not, and now we see that Cerberus is setting up around that Nash. They want to force SPTC to walk in and to be run over, because those small, tight spaces are great for the Vi, for the Rumble, for the Braum. They really want to fight there, why SPTC want open space, and now the engage comes in.
Equalizer to push out Slater, as that's going to be deal 1 wrecked on the side of this fight. A couple ultimates down, though, might buy a bit of space. Slater can't step up to auto-attack yet again. Looked like maybe there was an angle for Slater to be able to step up, but just not going to be the case. And Equalizer's almost back up. Like, come on. Like, it's like half up, and he just used it in that fight. As they're going to look for a 4v5, they're going to have to stop the Baron, because I think if you give up the Baron, you're just going to end up losing the soul point. As DNK is going to go with the Cyclone on the front. Paulette is trying to make sure that Yado cannot show up. Emperor needs to find an angle for an ultimate, doesn't have anything. They're going to go onto Yado just as quick as possible. Can't even find the kill against the Ahri. As DNK on the other side trying to buy some kind of space for Emperor, who's going to jump in with the Slicing Maelstrom. The Baron is stolen! A kill is taken! And out of nowhere, SBTC Esports is alive in this game. Pun's going to go down as a bunch of gold goes over to the side of SBTC Esports. Now Artemis is going to get autoed a bunch. Isn't quite going to go down. Slater's got Guardian Angel. He doesn't care. Yado got driven out of that fight, and somehow SE lives to fight another day. Tim, how did they just dig themselves out of that hole?
I mean, it's all down to shit ulti usage. Drakta opened that fight with an ultimate on the Nautilus. Nautilus hooked out. That was probably the worst part, or the worst ultimate you could use. Yado used his ultimate to kill Dia1. Again, not great ulti usage. Dia1 is basically useless anyways. At the same time, Pun used his ultimate to zone out the Xayah, but didn't really get anything. So all of those impactful ultimates just not doing anything in that fight. That now, on the contrary, means that you can walk up, you can get in, and Emperor hit a perfect ultimate in the pit. Really, the only position where Cerberus can put themselves to really make it easy for Emperor to get in is in the pit. They put themselves there, and they got run down. And I mean, something we have to remember is that there was only 500 gold lead for Cerberus when the fight started. It's not like they have a massive gold lead. No. It's just that the gold difference is on the really important positions. But so far, Artemis is not really in the game. He has his 4 items now, but he doesn't really have any big impact in this game.
No, hasn't been able to kind of step up. Again, it's these kind of one-off ultimates being able to utilize from the side of Cerberus that have done quite a bit. Equalizer alongside Yada being able to people off with a full combo and the Everfrost and everything else. That's going to be a driven down top tower. The Equalizer is not even enough. Even the full charge Equalizer is not enough to kill off that one cannon minion. Soul is still here for Cerberus. To me, that's their saving grace. Is they got 5 more minutes outside of anything else that pops up, and that's assuming that they don't just get the Infernal Soul on this pass alone. SE has not done. They could shove up mid lane now. They've got 24 seconds. The next wave is going to hit. They should be able to shove that one up. Should be able to take space in the river to kind of be here on time. We'll see if they're able to find another team fighter. Cerberus can kind of walk away. I think even if Cerberus ends up with 4 members, 3 members alive, if they have the Infernal Soul, they are perfectly fine and they are comfortable in this game. But it's going to be difficult now that SE's have this. Absolutely. Anything else? Okay.
They know he's there now.
Yes. Okay, Dragon's getting thrown down. Okay, Drakthar was, I think, trying to 50-50, and now Yado's just dead. Okay, that's Equalizer thrown. That's a big ultimate that's going to go down. DNK could just keep fighting against Pun, as that's going to slow him down. Cyclone's going to get him. 2 members are down. Like, Cerberus just tossed the game. Like, Drakthar wasn't able to get anything. He was trying to 50-50 the Dragon. Yado in a flank position, Pun in a position to put an Equalizer. Both of them get brought down. And now with Baron buff and with a 3rd Dragon, no chance for a soul, they might just push down the base.
It's a fight who can throw harder in this volleyball world championship here. Throwing the ball over net, and this game got thrown left, right, and center. Yes. Now the engage coming in from Palette. Okay. Onto Huba.
Yeah, a bit of damage. Now Drakthar goes ulting in on top of DNK, has to flash out immediately so as not to just get dumpstered. Artemis was still full health at the front end of this, and I think that's what they're a little bit terrified of as to whether or not the Zeri can actually full carry here. But not gonna, again, that's not gonna deter them more than anything else. I mean, being up 6,000 gold, they got their first really significant gold lead of the game. They canceled out the Dragon advantage. Now the next one's gonna be soul point for whoever has control. And right now, that control is on SE's side.
Nothing makes sense anymore. I mean, it looked to be all Cerberus all day, but I mean, SPTC fighting back, finding angles, finding those small fights, and Cerberus just, guys, we just take 5 men, we put down Rumble ulti, we force Xayah ulti, then we press Drakta ulti, and then we win the game. It is that simple.
And yet, it has not been done a single time for the last probably 15 minutes here for Cerberus. Again, they've got these big ticket ultimates, but it feels like they're just not able to clean up the way that they want to. And now Cerberus, if he lands some of these ultimates, it's great, but it still feels like Artemis has to bail them out. You can see the gold advantage back and forth between the two teams has just risen immensely over the last couple of minutes here for the side of SEs. They've cleaned up fights, they've cleaned up objectives, they've kind of done everything that they needed to. Because now Good equalizer, dumps the wave, everything else. That's a very dead Emperor, which means a lot of the team fight's going to be missing. Now on the backline is Slater going to be able to do a bunch of damage. Runen's going to be able to help put out damage. That's Drakthar going down. He's going to be able to stand forward and do a bunch of damage, as it does not matter if they lost. All the ultimates are just gone from the side of Cerberus. Now it's Slater versus Artemis, who's trying to carry harder right now. DNK gets a backline pot of play, and now hooked up is Palette. Oh my goodness, Slater set up for a massive quadra kill, and just like that, Cerberus Esports in the last 5 minutes have gone from losing this game, losing Infernal Soul, to just outright demolishing Cerberus in team fights, as they're going to drag out game number 3.
Pun never plays Rumble again. This guy thinks he's a tank. So, first of all, you played a great early game, my dude. Good laning phase. Really happy about that. Tim approved. Then we learned something. If we decide to fight for something, we do not use our ultimate on the wave. It's that simple. If we use ultimate in teamfight, we win teamfight. We do not use ultimate in teamfights, big doomed. Because he used the ultimate way too early, then the engage comes in, Emperor gets one shot, but because we don't have Rumble ulti, even though the Vi ulti actually goes through and makes sure that Zaya's in place, there's no Rumble ulti to follow up, means Zaya's fine. Zaya survives. Artemis in the end can't carry the teamfight alone because his team around him just falls apart. Yes, he was strong in the end, but it isn't enough, and yeah, Slater, he was definitely the carry that SPTC needed. He came in, he took over, and he won.
Again, being able to find a way to step up in the midst of fights, and that's not without a bunch of everything from everyone else. Again, top lane, Emperor did not have the greatest of games, but the fact that DNK and Palette did so much to enable Slater to be this big damage threat inside, especially the late game. I mean, that was the whole reason. I think he would have lost the duel against Artemis at the last possible minute if it weren't for Palette hitting that big hook, and DNK constantly being this dive threat in the back line, also finding members like Yato and anybody who was standing back there. Really, that kind of summed up to SPTC being able to drag out a win. As we are going into game number 3, Tim, it's kind of unbelievable. The first half of this game made it seem like maybe that was not going to be the case, that Cerberus would have had firm control. Who do you favor going into game number 3? Because it feels like we're just, again, like you said, it's a game of volleyball. We're just hitting the ball back and forth, throwing over the net.
Whoever is griefing less, I think. I mean, honestly, like, it didn't feel like a game of outplays, right? It felt like if Cerberus had actually taken their early game lead, snowballed it cleanly, it would have felt like a cleanly won game that would make me happy, right? I would have said, okay, Cerberus really showed up today. They had a good game 1, and then they come in game 2, they stomp through topside, they walk it down, and they win again.
Yeah,
they didn't win.
No, they did not. As it's an early game kind of squandered mildly here from the side of Cerberus Esports. We'll see if they have it in them again to be able to drag out another game, or if SPTCE are going to be able to make the reverse sweep happen, and again, probably doom Cerberus to play GEM in the first series of the playoffs, as we have our 3rd game of the series here on the last day of the split. We'll be back in just a little bit.
Hear the call for all the chosen ones. Come together, we've just begun. Chant till Valhalla comes. Chanting till Valhalla comes. stars below. Breathes the flames from the dying suns, and lifts awake the dying ones. The dying inside this world, there is no way back to forgive. I'm done. The simple and the sameness of the innocent. And so, keep us alive. Keep us running on. Let us fight once more. Till it's reset.
Welcome back, everybody, to the VCS English as we are entering our final game of the first series of the day, where Cerberus and SBTCE have given us some wild roller coasters of games, especially that game right there where SBTCE was able to even up the series and take us to game number 3 in the first place. Tim, what a game of or day of games that we've had already. We're not even into our second series yet. I'm already exhausted.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who's worse, honestly, after watching that. And that's not a great sentence to say, considering that those two were our playoff teams. I think all around SPTC actually showed. I mean, let's just forget, like, if we take out like 5 minutes from each game, maybe 10 from the like second game, then I think they look like a monster of a team, right? They look like the advertised team that had a good series against GAM. And then you put those 15 minutes throughout the two games back in, and you feel like, FF?
Yes.
Where's that good team now? Why do they forget how to play League of Legends for like 15 minutes?
Who's to say? I really don't understand. Yeah, SPTCE, they showed off so well that I was like, oh yeah, they're competing with Wales, like they're going to be up there, and they just aren't. And Cerberus, they performed a little better in game one, but again, they also are showing us why there's a reason why I wanted the Saigon Buffalo run to happen, because I was like, oh wow, it would be nice to see Saigon Buffalo if they could actually hit their original form, take us into playoffs, because they are such a good team when they're on form. And yet, Cerberus, SBTCE showing off in this game why we were a little bit skeptical of these two walking in. But one of them is going to be playing against Team Wales for the number 2 seed, which is wild to me. I don't think either one of them are on Wales level right now, hopefully, at least walking in. So it'd be nice to, in this third game, get some kind of payment out for these two teams to be our playoff squads, because it would kind of suck if we had this image of them walking into playoffs.
I mean, the thing about the Wade thing is that Wade played okay yesterday, but they didn't really show up either. The thing with Wade is they were really good at grouping up and just 5-manning things and just out team fighting you, right? That's what Wade's good at.
Mm-hmm.
Just pick front to back, run them over. And Killer Queen is an absolute monster in the jungle. So that's where it's Wade's on. But Wade's yesterday was really struggling when it came to rotations. I think in the second game they got a bit better, but especially early game rotations. And then into mid game, we're like, hey, we're 5 people. You are not. We win. And I'm not sure if that really works too well against teams like Cerberus or SBTC, because they should be able to figure out, hey, they just run around at 5 people. If we pick good comp, especially Cerberus, who have been picking better comps, I think, for that. Yeah. We just run around as 5 people as well, and then it's even footing.
Okay, let's get into our third game of the series here, Tim, as we are going back to Cerberus on the blue side, SBTCE here on the red side. We are sticking with Slater in the lineup, which, again, if they end up winning this game too, I wonder if the Vin boys kind of experiment was a mistake. We don't see the Ron OP substitute either, which is, again, strange, because Cerberus played so well with Ron OP at the beginning of the split. The fact that Huber is in tells you something. These two have been back and forth on the starting lineup for such a long time that I really wish that both of them would just get a job on different teams so we can actually see both of them starting. That is a first pick Viego.
Yeah, I mean, Draktar is a complete Viego one trick, no?
He was a Graves one trick back in the day.
No, but I mean this season, if I remember correctly,
he's played a lot more than anyone else.
I think he's like 8-1 on the Viego or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's just them saying, well, pick whatever you want. Draktar is too good on this champion, because it was banned twice yesterday against him,
was.
So.
Yes, I think it's been banned at least once or twice today as well. So it's not shocking in the slightest. I'm taken aback by it because not a lot of other teams are picking this at B1. This is I've also not really liked what I've seen from the champion for the most part. Again, I haven't watched too much of Drakthar on it, but I have been unimpressed by what teams have been able to do with the champion in this kind of iteration of it. So I was really shocked because I didn't feel like the champion was powerful enough to warrant something like this, but clearly Cerberus does, because they've already taken it here.
So basically, Viego has 3 games. He won all 3 of them, and then it was basically permanent against him. So that's what happened to the Viego. With the Ari, of course, good burst partner, and Yado showed, of course, that he has a good Ari. And then for Huba, it is the Nautilus to just lock down the Zeri to make sure that the Zeri cannot play. And LeBlanc as an answer into the Ari is something that we've seen most recently, and of course, LeBlanc Lee is that original high mobility team combo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a matter of wave control is owned by Ari, but LeBlanc, especially like if you're using your Q more effectively after the buffs and such, you get the solid trading damage in the laning phase, and once you get out of laning phase, you're LeBlanc and you get to do quite a bit more damage. So Dia1's also a very, very talented LeBlanc player, one of the champions that's kind of, I wouldn't say it's one of the defining champions of Dia1's career, but it certainly is up there, and having had performances in the past that have made it look like one of those champions before. As now we're stepping into back half of the draft, waiting on support picks. So now, it's not going to be Hero getting the pool, but it is going to be Paulette who gets the pool pinched a little bit more. What do you want as the response now to the Nautilus lane? Because we're not going to get a chance to see the ADC. You're likely going to have to pick this ahead of time to try to grab it to protect your top lane pick here.
I think Renata might be an option here that they could go for. I think that my top laner would be crying for an Olaf pick right here on 4. I think it's incredibly good for the side of SPTC, or it might just be like something aggressive like the Leona. The Blitzcrank would be surprising, as would the Pantheon be. It's not Spearshot playing, so we don't pick Pantheon. Rel into Nautilus. So we have a Rel pickup. It's definitely a champion that can work. As we see, of course, has 100% win rate, has 1 game. and has won it. So it is definitely something that can work, but it's a bit surprising that it came out here.
Yeah, I'm quite shocked that we ended up seeing the Rel in this position as opposed to any other, because it kind of feels like it's out of nowhere. You know what's even crazier is that it's Ron OP who played it, so it wasn't Paulette, it wasn't anybody else in the league. It was Ron OP, the main tank player in the bottom lane support role that kind of did it. And we get the Samira for Artemis. Most of the time, I don't like Samira. This, however, is the one player who is allowed to pick it anytime he pleases, because this is the perfect champion for his playstyle. He likes going crazy and jumping into the middle of teamfights and killing everybody, and that's kind of what this champion's designed for.
So, still Olaf. No, we're not picking our Emperor. No. Olaf is broken. We take the Viking.
Not too late.
Oh, man. We're angry Viking noises. So good to the enemy team. Anyways, the thing with Artemis and the Samira is that I was told a lot of things in my first bit about Artemis. Came in, Artemis picked first game Samira, did 3,000 damage in a 35-minute game, when lost his team the game by picking Samira.
Yes,
I'm just hoping that this doesn't happen again. I think this game, though, he has good angles. There's very little like point and clicks you see to lock him down to make sure that he can't play outside of the rel. So as soon as the rel goes in, I think it's time for Samira to jump in. And I think everybody who's watching LPL remembers one Samira player basically saying, you can have all the CC you want, you can have all the like protection you want, I am better than you, and Artemis definitely is good enough to do that with the VCS as well. So if he channels his inner Abel after we saw Pan trying to channel his inner Shanji, then I think we can definitely see good performance.
Yeah, to me, again, anything that allows Artemis to kind of play to his own beat and rhythm over the course of a team fight is usually something that he is preferential to. And so that's always like, Samira is the one that comes to mind, because it's like this champion stacks, and then it's like a Katarina ultimate. You use a bunch of mobility, a bunch of kind of self-deflection stuff with the W. And it opens up the talent of this player, I think, a lot more than people recognize. He's a very talented back-end damage dealer like Jinx and Zeri and all that stuff, but this is where he really, truly shines, is some of the very mechanically intensive, engage-heavy type AD play, which is very rare to find, but Artemis, some of the best of it. So if you're SPTC, are you sweating here, or are you comfortable given the fact that they are running this rel? They've got enough to try and maybe play a front to back, as long as Artemis doesn't get to just freely jump in and kill everyone.
I think as long as you keep it in mind that Artemis exists and that you have to shut down Artemis as soon as you see him stepping up, I think you're fine. I think the team comp all around that I see from SPTC, again, it has to snowball. You have to find early engages, and you have to play it aggressive, but I think you can definitely do that.
All right, we're gonna maybe jump into game number 3 here. I think we're frozen a little bit, but that's been happening a little bit today, as it's not too big of an issue, as we're stuck on the rune screen more than anything else. It was double electrocute, which I think is a very common practice for Ahri versus LeBlanc, as both of them do like quite a bit of that, to be able to kind of dump into the opposite during the course of the laning phase. If you don't take it, you end up being at a bit of a disadvantage trading-wise. But other than that, I didn't see anything particularly interesting among the runes when we were stuck on the page.
Absolutely, and with that, we can see. The bot lane should be an absolute cluster.
So
because I mean, it's Rel versus Nautilus, and then you have the Samira in there, of course. And something that most people don't really know about Zeri is that while your pre-6 is not the strongest, your level 6 power spike is actually massive, because your extra burst damage on your ultimate, just being able to basically deal, like have a Blitzcrank ultimate on top of the rest of your ultimate, is just so strong that you can easily find those level 6 ult lanes and make sure that you snowball from there. Because every time you have ulti after that, if you get those early kills, you can just run on people, and that's how, like, if you're ever asking yourself, like as a top laner or like mid laner or jungler, how your bot lane is losing to Zeri early, that's usually how it goes.
Yeah, there's always the kind of level 2 that you can all in on if you've got the right champion, and maybe Paulette wants to make that happen if you've got the laser or the E to be able to kind of put some additional damage out, but they don't have control of the wave to do that with. And so Slater and Paulette probably just have to back off and give credence over to Artemis and Huber to ensure that they don't just get chain CC locked up in the air by the Samira, and everything else goes about. There's a Lee Sin heading to top lane right now, as Pun and Emperor are both kind of fighting back and forth. DNK kind of beelined it up here. He's going to jump in and maybe try to find Pun. Q not quite going to find anything, as Emperor is just going to get some push assistance from DNK here.
I mean, Emperor is just losing a lot of XP on this while Huber's
That
going
was wild. Huber missed the hook, hit the wall, didn't end up getting anything as Artemis was eventually able to after the auto went through. They're just under the...
We're just diving top. Okay. Respect.
Huh?
That's the energy we need, man. That's Balls of Steel's energy. Just telling Pun to shove it. I think Emperor has a bit of anger left from last game. Of course, Draktar on the other side gets to invade and gets to steal away at least the Grom, and does not steal away the Grom. In fact,
No.
So nothing really gained for him, and I mean that's just a dive in top lane.
How in the world did they dive that? They literally ran right up top lane. They ran right through the lane. There was no nuance. There was no secret to what they were doing. Like DNK and Emperor just forced their way onto a Scion in the beginning of the game. Like that was insane. I wish we had a replay of that. I kind of want to see. I hope that we get one eventually because I really have to see how in the world that they pulled that off into a tank at the beginning of the game. But somehow, like you said, I like the energy that's being exuded here from SBTC. It reminds me of the beginning of Game 1 when they were bullying Drakthar, which was probably the best we saw from them in their opening.
Yes, and DNK on the Lycian, of course, has the abilities to be the playmaker for his team, to make sure that his team gets those advantages, because I think the biggest difference between those two teams in favor for SBTC definitely is the jungle position. I think DNK and Drakthar are not really on the same level. I think Drakthar, from the top 4 teams, is probably by far the weakest of the junglers, and I think he is always going to be that point that teams try to abuse, and DNK so far is doing a good job of doing that.
Mm-hmm. See a bit of fighting back here for Pun as he's kind of behind the tower, proxying just a little bit. I kind of wanted him to stay there. He has full support from Drakthar, so I'm actually a little surprised. And he's got this this Demolish, and you really could abuse Demolish in a lot of ways when you get behind the tower. I'm really surprised Pun didn't step up in more an aggressive kind of stance right there, because it felt like you could have easily tried to pull half of a plate off that tower, if not a little bit more. You would have denied a lot more farm from Emperor, as it would have all crashed into the tower, but instead he pulls off a bit, maybe trying to opening up a gank. As you can see, Drakthar is just behind Emperor. He's trying to have his cake and eat it too by taking up the Krugs. So Emperor's going to spot him. Yeah, now he's not going to be able to find it at all.
Yes, but with Yado being forced into base by Dia1, or having to recall because Dia1 already had his recall, means that the Gnar is actually safe, protected by his mid laner. Now, DNK kind of figures out, wait, Palette's dead.
They're trolling bot lane here. Artemis does have to press cleanse. That's the auto attack that's going to come through. Now the question is, do they get more? E is going to come out as the dash forward from Slater. You got to do something here. If you're Huber, Q's just landing. Nice. Q at the very tail end of that is going to be able to make sure that that's not going to work. Slater's not going to be able to find a matched kill here up against Artemis, as that's just an assassination of Palette at the beginning of this game.
Yeah, but it's so close. Nearly traded back by Slater. You can really see how much damage Zeri can do in the long run, of course, having stacked up her lethal tempo as well. But in the end, it is just a kill for the Samira, which means she now has a lane advantage. And if you know anything about Samira, it's usually that a small lane advantage doesn't stay small for long.
Not in the slightest. Especially, Serrated Dirk was the first buy just for some really, really heavy kind of upfront damage, maybe not expected by Palette, and is now going to dip back to the traditional build, going to go for Marksman, maybe go into like Shield Bow and stuff like that, which is just going to be a disgusting kind of plays. Now you've got some attack speed, you have a little more AD. Slater's only got boots right now to really work with, so when it comes to just single off auto trades, ability trades, you know that that's going to be dominated by Artemis at this point.
Absolutely it will, and so we will probably also see Cerberus moving towards a Drake, especially since they have 4 people here right now. Dia1 is being forced out, and that should be the position on this Drake. Now they snowball that into bot. Make sure that Artemis gets the push there, and then they have an angle for Drake if they want to take it.
Yeah, and Artemis has a wave beginning to stack really effectively here. It's going to be hard for Slater and Palette to kind of clear it very, very quickly, which again, Dragon should be on the table. Drakthar is not quite committed to it yet. In fact, he's going to go to clearing Krugs more than anything else. It's a little shocking. It feels like they have a really good Dragon setup here, and yet they will not take advantage of it. They will not push for anything more. Instead, they'll just be able to collapse on this bottom side. This wave will be massive when it ends up crashing into the tower, though.
Yeah, and there were 2 really good plays, of course, with this wave. Take Drake or dive, actually. thinking that Lee Sin is top. In the end, they don't either. But they still can use that wave if they want to for Drake. Nope, they use it for a recall, and in the end, nothing really gained. And I'm really surprised that Cerberus doesn't go for the Drake, because it is a Mountain Drake early, so that Drake usually skates really nicely into the later stages of the game.
Yeah, I don't like seeing teams waste time on the map right there. Again, the word tempo's got quite a bit of charge to it, but that's what I'll say is that they had tempo on bottom side, and it ended up just kind of going to waste as opposed to being able to use it for some kind of big play. The only thing I can think is, again, they're actually performing the third possible option here, which is the shift for Rift Herald, because they want to focus on snowballing this Samira. And so if they really want to put it, I feel like the Rift Herald doesn't do that nearly as well anymore. Obviously, after now 2 plates are no longer guaranteed, it's just 1.5. But they clearly feel it's necessary. As we're going back to the Mickey Mouse split, we're flipping on the first Herald of the game. Maybe both teams kind of situated here to fight. Pun's going to stand in first, 2,000 health left on the Rift Herald, stolen by Drakthar. As that's going to be that. Now they have to get in on top of it. Gnar Ultimate's going to put everybody into the wall. That's going to be Artemis, who's kicked back into the rest of the team. Ultimate's going to get popped, but he's not going to find anybody. As SBTCE have decimated the fight. Yato tries to come in to clean something up. W is going to be so massive for Slater, as that's one traded back. Drakthar might have the resets now. Rel going to jump into the back line. Can't find the kill on Slater either. And just like that, 5 members of Cerberus get brought down around the Rift Herald, Tim.
I think somebody survived.
Did
I think somebody got out?
Was it maybe Huber? Might have been Huber getting out.
Huber.
No, Huber. I think that was all 5 members.
All 5 members died, which is obviously like no matter what, it's an absolute disaster. And if we look on the top lane position, I think Pun really is not having fun. We can look back. First, Drakthar steals this actually. The big question is, do they actually get it?
No, they don't. They never get it.
I think they don't get it. And now, great kick here onto Artemis, killing Artemis, and then DNK survives this, does not give the reset to the Viego, who could carry the fight. Palette now going in, but Yato dies for it. Palette dies, but the Rel reset just not being strong enough. Slater surviving by the slimmest of margins here. And then once again, Pun tries with the Q. And I thought the person that was getting out was a clone of Dion, so I just saw somebody walking away, and I thought it was one member of Cerberus. But SPTT so far much stronger in this game, but we know how fast that can change from last game.
Okay, and Yato dies as well to the combination of DO1 and DNK. That's terrible. Again, this early game has completely spiraled out of control for the side of Cerberus. It felt like they were commanding the beginning of the game, but that all it took was that one kind of aggressive play. Drakthar and Pun stood forward to grab the Rift Herald. They get the steal. They don't even get the Rift Herald pickup, but it opened up Enper jumping in on top of Artemis, preventing the Samira from being able to get their footing to go aggressive during the course of the fight. And now, not feeling great inside of this game. Still has a bit of a lead over top of Slater, but not anywhere near. The snowball's not going to happen the way that they wanted it to by any standard. And again, remember, they spent all of their bot lane tempo on that play to the Rift Herald. They shifted to that instead of taking Dragon, instead of diving bot. They had so many options, and that's what they went with.
Yeah, and in the end, they get punished. Of course, you can understand trying to go for that play. It doesn't have to be terrible for them, but in the end, it backfires massively. And now we see a standoff at the Drake. Drakthar, DNK, and support are looking, but bot prio and mid prio secured for the side of Cerberus. Should mean Drake is going to be theirs. If Slater, DNK, and Palette don't have anything to say about it, they are still standing around. They might be looking. DNK is over the wall. What are we doing?
We're just flipping everything. Yes. Oh, they're going to catch on the way back in, actually, yeah. They won't. They're not. DNK finds a play on Artemis, kicks it back into the rest of the team. That's going to be a very dead Artemis. Very patient play coming over there from DNK. As now Huber under quite a bit of duress. He's going to go down to Slater as well. Slater just pops off right there. And again, very patient. Great punish from SE as they wait for the Dragon. They wait for them to return to lane. And that's just a dead Artemis now.
Great play here from DNK, being able to get into the bush, was completely unspotted, and perfect insect onto Artemis, who can't really do anything because he gets instantly by Palette as well. Then Huber gets run out as well. 2 kills to Slater, and that's so important, because if DNK gets those kills, it's okay for Cerberus, but the Zeri getting the kills is an absolute disaster.
Yeah, there's no way now for Artemis to be able to leverage a massive advantage, because at the beginning of the game, they were winning that bot lane matchup, but with 3 kills, that's a shield bow completed, that's the boots completed. I mean, there's not counterplay here for Artemis now. The Zeri is just going to be impossible to get on top of and really do anything for, unless Slater just kind of tosses him more than anything else. As I think as the way the series is going right now, this is actually really Cerberus' favorite. Am I wrong, Tim? I feel like every time somebody gets a solid early game, the other team ends up just like bringing it back out of nowhere. So I think you're fine if you're Cerberus at this point.
I mean, the big thing that I'm seeing is that yes, you have a solid front-to-back team fight comp, technically, but on Cerberus' side, but it's so much onto Artemis and so much finding that perfect angle. And I feel like on the other side, there's so much playmaking. And there's Slater. And Slater is going to be able to 1v9 the game because the lockdowns you see outside of Nautilus is basically non-existent. Draktar will have a really hard time getting onto Slater. Same for Yado. And there's good protection because you can build so much space with Gnar, Lee Sin, LeBlanc. If you leave any of those champions alone in a teamfight, they will still carry the teamfight as well. And Palette, of course, with that great engage tool. So I think Slater is going to have all the time in the world to also take in those team fights, and that means with 3 kills and that early lead, he can easily carry the game.
Absolutely. I want to believe that as well. Goodness gracious. 14 minutes in, 11 kills, 4,000 gold advantage. This is probably the best early game advantage we've seen. Nice slide from Slater to get out of dodge as fast as possible. And as the game kind of ticks forward, these neutral objectives are going to continue to be tracked. Cerberus did get the first dragon, which is beneficial. Second Rift Herald's going to be popping up here. And again, we saw the winter split kind of come about. I think it was 2021 winter come about there for a second as, again, teams flipping on that to start off the game. Emperor is going to be a pest towards Pun. Will he jump under? Is he a Chad or is he a jump? That is the question. Oh, Draktar's here. He's going to be a jump. Never mind. He actually might have an opportunity. Emperor. Oh, flash into Draktar. Disastrous. Now W's going to come through. Emperor is outplaying them for the moment, but that ultimate should probably do it. And that's a shutdown for Draktar. Not pretty, but it does get the job done.
I mean, yeah. Emperor kind of completely broke the ankles, honestly. In bot lane, though, the turret should fall, which means you're trading that kill in top lane for first blood turret, and Draktar is getting engaged on by DNK.
Yes, through the EQ.
Oh, no.
DNK. The missed Q. It feels so bad.
He did the mad run. Oh.
Missing the Q, not able to hit it, not able to follow up means that they don't get that kill. Pun TP'd bot to watch the tower fall and is now being run at. This is a boss angle right now, just throwing himself away in order to get any sort of damage.
I mean, the thing is, I can say with absolute confidence that is not a good death.
No. That is very, very true. It was a joke more than anything, obviously. There's no way he gets away with criminal murder here by doing that, but no, it's not going to be the case. Instead, he turns for Slater. And it is Rift Herald traded back, but they lost the tower, and he just gave away a kill and a teleport for nothing. Like,
yeah.
That's it. That's all I got. Rift Herald did go on Artemis.
There's none, I agree, and the thing is, it's again onto Slater. Slater is 4-0-4. He has 2 items and boots as Zeri in 15-16 minutes. Yes. That's usually where Samira, like when I said that, usually one Samira kill isn't enough. There are usually more to come. I didn't think that we would end with a 4-4 on the Slater.
Yeah, I didn't think we would either, but here we are, and Emperor's even going to pull top tower after Samira was defending it for a second. Samira did finish shield bow, so you do have a bit more defense, a little bit of lifesteal to work with. And the Rift Herald should help. Again, if Artemis is able to find any alone time to farm up and also make up for the experience disadvantage, because right now he's down 2 levels to Slater. If you're able to kind of bridge that with a little bit of solo lane time, break a solo tower, maybe Artemis can kind of climb back into a damage position in this game. But for now, there's just no way that Cerberus can play out team fights in any significant fashion without a really, really big play coming through.
Now we see both teams hanging around that mid and the Drake, but in the end, it is Cerberus who are fighting for that position with the Herald in mid lane. Slater has to go over to that. Cerberus now has to get their position onto Drake, though. They're still contesting mid lane. I'm not sure why they're not just on Drake with the Herald. The Herald is now gone, and Cerberus is engaging.
Solid. Emperor does go into ultimate, but that's going to be a shutdown. Yado is able to grab that one up, as that was a lot of damage up the up front. It was actually basically pure Yado right there, getting that job done right there. Another charm actually lands, forces the flash out of Palette, who's going to jump in. He's going to be able to find one on the front end. Dia1 jumps in as well, not going to find it, as that's Artemis who, actually, it's Yado who gets a kill instead of Artemis. It's a little bit of trade back and forth. Pun now getting run out. Charm up onto Slater. Ultimate comes in from Artemis. Is he going to be able to find a kill? I think he trades, but it's Yado who gets it again. As DNK jumps in onto Draktar. Pun's going to try to auto-attack DNK down, but he's not going to quite find the damage. things got really exciting there for a second. And we get a 3 for 4. Yato cleans up so many kills. It's unfortunate. I almost wish that those would have gone on to Artemis because it might have meant for more counterplay, but at minimum, something back for Cerberus as they also lose the Dragon at the top end.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 4 for 3 and a Drake. I think it's not what SPTC wanted, but still, it favors them. They get the second Drake. They get a kill less and a kill more, but some shutdowns also going over to Cerberus. So Cerberus definitely not too angry about that. And let's look at the start of the fight again, because Emperor gets hooked here, and he's mini now, and he only gets Mega 9 in the last second, basically gets burst instantly, gives the first reset over to Drakta, and he starts zoning out DNK then as well. And now it's all on Palette, Slater, and Dia1 to carry this team fight, and Slater is doing so much damage in those seconds, but he's gonna be charmed up in a second, and that really changes the team fight, because if the charm doesn't land, he probably gets to free play this entire team fight and stomps it.
Yeah, not to mention, okay, right there, I was watching to see what exactly had happened. So Yato landed a nasty charm on a Slater. The E came in from Artemis, and then he popped the W to get the ult. If he had saved the W for even like another second, I feel like there was enough damage from Dia1 and Slater that kind of popped him, that if it had been up a little bit longer and blocked the first rotation of spell from Dia1, maybe Artemis lives, pops, gets some kills, maybe drives back Dia1, and it might end up being like a 3 for 3 where they can contest the Dragon. Probably Artemis doesn't die in that situation, but again, was so anti to try to pull that Inferno trigger. It just ends up, burning it a little too fast, which sucks, because Cerberus was super close to breaking that open. At least Yato also played that to perfection, and that required perfect plays. We're going to jump right into another play. As Pun ease onto Slater, Slater is just going to get absolutely dumpstered. Give the kill to Artemis. There it is. Something back for their ADC to get something going in this game. Maybe start cooking for Artemis a little bit.
And Slater's completely out of position. I'm not sure what he was doing there now. But talking about out of position,
okay, Drakthar gets kicked out of that fight. Nice ultimate, actually. He's going to chase down Dia1, try to find something. Q's not going to be able to land, goes over top of the wall, now has to get out of dodge, but DNK is going to be here and going to be able to clean up that kill. Almost certainly, that's the ward hop. He's going to be stuck by the minions under the tower. Ultimate's going to come through, and that's going to be a shutdown for Huber. And now will he find another? Huber, will he clutch? Support V9. Can he do it? He's not going to try. He's just going to dodge because LeBlanc's an annoying champion to deal with. He is but a simple Nautilus with no ultimate. Never mind, I lied. He's going back in, baby. He's going to try to find something. Artemis is right behind him if Dia1 dares, but Artemis won't walk any further. He knows that if he gets baited, then that's just going to be his support dying. And so they're going to walk away 1 for 1 underneath that tower. It's 600 gold win onto Huber.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably best case for DNK, because he's playing at least in. It's very, very easy to get killed in one of these team fights. Give that big shot on over to Artemis. Now it's on the Nautilus where we don't really care, you know? So I think giving that over is actually fine for him. And we can see the dive is coming in, but in a second, he actually lands the Q this time, which is a win. Dia1 survives with so little HP. Decent amount of times. Gromp actually resets on the back end. If Gromp doesn't reset just half a second longer, he dies from Gromp.
Yeah, that and the safeguard shield, both of those kept him alive. Like one auto from the Gromp and then that safeguard shield were literally the whole difference in not dying there for LeBlanc, which would have been another kill on a Drakthar, which would have been a tremendous kind of grab out of nowhere. Especially after the resulting play afterwards, get another kill. There is a collector done for Samira, which is a decent power spike coming in for this. That means the Inferno trigger is going to do a lot more. Man, this is I can count the pixels on the screen right now. My brain is smooth, but what in the world?
I think now it's very important for SPTC to just not play until Slater has actually hit the Navori quick blades. I think that's such a massive power spike for him, and Samira is gonna take a long time until she actually heads to Infinity Edge. So I think that item advantage has to then be played out. But before that, I think Samira right now is on equal terms with that Zeri.
Are you also frozen at least a little bit?
Yeah,
I just want to make sure we're not. All right,
I'm also frozen. That's why I tried to fill it with some predictions.
We just have to make sure to keep our producer on his toes as I enter every once in a while by DDoSing his stream. And your feeling was great because I think you were talking about very pertinent points of these ADs kind of getting onto the right itemization at the right time. We missed a little bit of the game.
And Nash without Navori, so they're doing exactly what I told them not to do. But let's looking for the flank, looking for the big engage here. While Dia1 is zoning, and there's Pun.
Okay, they're gonna ditch. They're not going to fight. They've listened to your advice. Your sage wisdom has been picked up. Oh, wait, never mind. They're going to fight. It's Huber on the front end of this one. He's actually going to deny Paulette so much. Huber on the backside, also stopping up Emperor before anything else comes through. Drakthar is going to go running in the midst of everything. Artemis tries to jump in as well, so he's going to get absolutely eviscerated on the backside. But the Charm's going to catch up Slater. I don't think they have the damage to actually bring him down. And on the backside of the fight, he lives forever. Everyone on the side of Cerberus is just dead. I don't know. They had such a decent fight going. It looked like maybe they had a winning situation, and instead the backhand damage from the squad just is way too high, and Cerberus gets routed.
And Artemis, sadly to say, is so incredibly useless, and it's not just down to him. It's just down to DNK and Emperor always finding him, always kicking him into Slater, and he ends up dying before he does anything again, because this time it's Emperor with the ultimate. Just kick him in and look at Slater. Look at the 80 carry difference. That is the damage difference you really do not want to see between those two carries. And here we can see. It feels like Palette is dying for nothing. But the Gnar actually survives. Huber's flash completely useless. DNK also survives. And now the Inferno Trigger gets cancelled. Artemis gets kicked in. Gets killed. Yado with the Charm. Not enough damage on his own to kill Slater. And at this point Slater is completely safe. And then the flank from DR1 to clean everybody up together with DNK. Together with Emperor.
Yeah, it's a combination of ultimates. It just feels like they are never expecting. It's almost like SPTCE lived long enough for their cooldowns to come back, and Cerberus didn't kill anybody. And as a result, when they came back with their cooldowns, Cerberus just got wrecked. Like there was nothing more to say. Not to mention Slater staying on the back, constantly hitting members with his Q. When the ultimate is charged up, he's able to do anything that he wants. And now, I mean, this has to be a commanding enough lead to not throw, right? I know I'm saying that, I'm maybe jinxing it, but 11,000 is far and away the most we've seen in the series. This should be way too easy for SPTCE to just kind of walk in over top of the line. Their ADC is never going to be responded to. It feels like their mid laner is going to be powerful. And I look at D1, he's almost onto finished itemization, almost onto full stack to like Magi's. We're getting there for this team having the damage to just be completely incomprehensibly ahead in this one.
I don't trust. I do not trust until the Nexus is dead. They let me down too often, both of these teams. So I think SPTC did definitely with a good game for sure. And yes, under normal circumstances, if the series had gone a bit differently before this, I would have told you, yes, obviously it's over. But I'm not calling game over just yet. Done that before, was a big mistake, and in this case, Yado is might be looking for Slater.
Massive flank coming through. Pun unfortunately misses it onto Slater. They're not able to tag it up, as I thought that was going to be dead to rights. They're going to continue this fight. I don't think that they're done quite yet. They want to find the angle onto Palette and onto Emperor. They want this 5-person fight. They're losing the bottom side as Deal 1 is there. That's going to be a hook. That's going to be Palette trying to chain CC, as Artemis wants more, is going to find that kill, going to find that play against Palette, as they lose the bottom inhibitor for the one kill. They're actually probably going to lose mid inhibitor for the kill as well. Slater and Emperor aren't necessarily quite done. Yado wants a little bit more as well. Slater might get brought down, as that is going to be a kill going on to Huber. Again, the other side of the map, they're losing their base really, really heavily right now, but they're not done quite yet, as Huber might be looking at Emperor. This should just be the push in top lane, I'm assuming, is what's going to happen here.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's 2 kills over to Cerberus, but 2 inhibs over to SPTC, and I'm gonna have to be honest, I agree with you. I also saw Slater completely dying for no reason there. And now I think Cerberus botlane is in trouble. Artemis trying to outplay. Artemis trying to find his ultimate.
Can't. Just barely not able to get the Inferno trigger out. Just barely dies ahead of time. And now Yado, the only real damage dealer remaining here to try to make anything sort of happen, as that's just going to be them getting pushed off. They lost mid inhibitor and bot inhibitor for some kind of attempted counterplay around this top side. But even if they get 3 kills and nothing else, they lost 2 inhibitors for basically nothing when no objectives are on the map to be able to kind of chain into anything else. Like, it's just desperation from Cerberus.
Yeah, I mean, they have to find something, and they have to get Artemis back into the game. And it feels like, for different reasons, the Samira is just not working out. He's just not able. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think he's insane on a champion. I think he isn't bad on a champion, but There's only really one player in the world that I want to see playing Samira at the moment. I think it's not too strong of a champion, so I'm surprised that they still went for it, because when I think of Artemis, I think of champions like Twitch. I think of champions like Caitlyn, like Jinx, where he can just 1v9 every single team fight if he gets those 2-3 items. And I'm always surprised when he picks up Samira, because yes, it fits with his playstyle, but I feel like it isn't strong enough to 1v9 for his team, and especially against the top teams, that's often what he needs to do.
Yeah, I mean that's been a play style that they've had to go back to time and time again, and especially against other playoff teams. These are squads. This is also again, if I had to be honest, walking into today, if it were not for game number 1, if this were a 2-0 for SBTCE, I think it's basically guaranteed that GAM is picking Cerberus. There's like no chance they're picking another team 100% walking into playoffs. This was far and away the weakest squad. And you can see part of it why. Again, their diversity of play just isn't really that insane. It's not really that high. Their team fighting isn't superb when Artemis isn't kind of going. To me, this is a middle tier team. This time they were able to sneak away, as this is going to be a fight around this one. Ultimate's going to get Pun or an Emperor kind of knocked up long enough that there's going to be quite a bit of chain CC to follow. Is that to jump in? Rel's going to be able to pull everybody together. Is there anything else afterwards? Artemis is already dead in this fight, so I don't even know why we're continuing. Slater just gets to walk forward and throw autos in. There's nothing for them to do here. I don't even know what else to say. Cerberus just loses this one outright. There's nothing else to do. As SPTCE, again, maybe game 1 wasn't great. Maybe that was a Vin Boys difference or something like that. Game 2 didn't look all that great, but game 3 is exactly what I expected of them today. Walking into playoffs, leveling up, and being able to beat down these other teams, potentially take a shot at the Kings of GAM, as they did just earlier on in the week, as they grab up the series and are going to almost certainly sentence Cerberus to the gallows in the first round with that GAM play.
Yeah, and this might also seem harsh, but I think one of the reasons that we even see Cerberus in the playoffs is because Saigon Buffaloes underperforming this bit. I think if Saigon Buffaloes really had the performances from the very last weeks, even earlier in the split, and I think it's an angle where Cerberus isn't even making playoffs, because you said it's a middling team for sure, and Cerberus had an insane start. They were really coming out of the gates hot, while the other teams were still struggling, and I think now they actually, from what I've seen, I would say, and I may be a bit biased towards Saigon here, I think Saigon in the past weeks was a better team, but the entire split counts, so we see Cerberus here, but that means, I agree, I think they are just here to be slaughtered, and they're here to be slaughtered by GAM, and it's going to be rough.
I'm just mostly confused because, again, Cerberus making a swap this late into the season, especially one that, like, in a game where it feels like you're fighting for playoff life, because if you get thrown against GAM, it's usually, I do say usually because they've lost exactly one best of 5 inside of playoffs previously to get knocked down into the lower bracket. They ended up winning that split anyway, which was last split against Saigon Buffalo. But one way or another, you're probably getting knocked down into the lower bracket basically immediately if you end up playing GAM. So why the late season swap over to Hubert? Do you really think that he's strong enough that he should be contesting? Like, Ron OP has been probably a top 3 support most of the splits here inside of the VCS. So to out of nowhere be like, hey, Huber's playing better, let's throw Hubert, especially when Ron OP is one of your in-game leaders for this squad, is just so confusing. It's so baffling to me. Would you look at that 10k damage, huh? This is similar to the first game that you saw the Artemis damage.
Yeah, it is sad, but it is the Samira lifestyle.
Such is life. I don't know. From what games you've seen, do you think that Huber is the right choice over Ron OP this late in the season? Even if he's performing better in scrims, do you think this is a necessary swap for the squad?
Honestly, if you're going to play Huber, and I mean that, like, fair enough, you decide. But please don't play Ron OP Champions, man. Like, don't go and play fucking Rakan and Nautilus. Like, what are we doing? Like, we're playing Huber. This guy is actually one of the guys who is known and as one of the guys who can play range supports. Go and play Jinx Lulu. Go and play Aphelios Lulu. Give your AD carry space. Make sure that he has those hyper carry champions. Make sure that he has an enchanter. Start playing Soraka if you need to. But please do not blind pick Nautilus. Just because Amira and then lose. Like, this is what is tilting me. Like, I'm not too tilted about them swapping supports. If it just feels like they throw in Cuba and give him what they would have played with Ron OP. And I feel like if you're gonna put him in, give him the champions that he can play that Ron can't play. And then let him perform on those. Because you have a hyper carry AD carry player, give him the space to actually do it. And they're not doing that. So I can't agree with the change if they're not
Mhm.
starting to swap the champion pool as well.
Yeah. And for Cerberus, I think figuring out Drakthar versus Ego, figuring out Rana-P versus Huber is kind of the hurdle they have to figure out walking into playoffs, because they have some star power, they have some electricity. I think Yato played a great series today, but like, again, it's not enough. It's very clearly not enough against other playoff teams to have that one avenue. For SPTC Esports as well, Slater coming in was a massive difference maker. Right? You think about that first game, he basically was like the sole reason they were able to kind of late game team fight. And then that second game as well, the Zeri just got absolutely juiced and the team is winning. Knowing that like Emperor is a threat, DNK is a threat, DL1 is a threat, and having this top end ADC in Slater, like, what do you think about SPTCE? I know you were kind of down on Wales. Do you think they're the second best team right now?
I think it's going to be really close because neither SPTC nor Waves really. I feel like from the games that I've seen, we're up in macro with the GAM, for example. I think they're very similar in that they play the game through fights. They win the game through fights.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot is going to come down to how the matchup DNK versus Killer Queen really goes, because I think Killer Queen definitely, I mean, Levi probably has one of the strongest splits in recent memory for himself. So I think it's always going to be fight for second best jungler in the league currently. And I think DNK and Killer Queen are definitely fighting that fight. And I think whoever it really goes to and whoever can dominate the mid game through that has a good shot at winning, because they have very good bot lanes in most cases. And I think with Slater, you probably have one of the strongest carry players in the league. And I feel like what I've seen from Slater today is what I think Artemis should do for his team. That's the Artemis playstyle. That's the give me a hyper carry champion and just believe that I will carry you if you don't grief me too hard. And Slater came in. Winboys basically was completely useless game one. He didn't flash multiple times. Slater comes in, plays nearly perfect game two, except for the top play. Plays nearly perfect game three. Basically plays a perfect game three. Hard carries his team, drags them through the series, and then where's Artemis? He's hanging around on Samira, and I can't believe that. As a coach myself, it's not something that as a coach you go to your AD carry and be like, yeah, it's a Samira game, and the AD carry is like, no, it's bad. No, we're picking Samira. That doesn't happen. Like, Samira is one of those champions. It's like LeBlanc, where your player is coming to you and says, this is the Samira angle, and you give it to him. And so I think he really has to be blamed for that pick as well. And I think he just has to find a different place, and especially with Yuba coming in, get those hyper carries. Contest for the Zaya, for example, and get her into your team. Get the Aphelios, get the Jinx.
And now, I guess, walking into the end of this split here for a lot of these playoff teams, clearly Cerberus sits at our number 4 spot. That's guaranteed. Wales will be playing up against SPTC. Maybe it's kind of weird right now. Wales has a better game score, but we don't know if that's the tiebreaker. It kind of sounds like there's going to be a tiebreaker game played tomorrow. Yeah, that's what I think it is. So tomorrow, Wales will be playing SPTC for a tiebreaker for second place. And the only thing that guarantees you is that you will not be playing GAM in the first round. But I think with Cerberus being executed to 4th place, that's pretty much a guarantee anyway. So tomorrow is a bit of a different game. And for today, we're not done quite yet, because we do still have what could be a really entertaining series, as Saigon Buffalo, our team that is sitting in 5th place right now, basically in an unimportant position whatsoever, is taking on the number 1 team in GAM. Maybe we'll get some crazy picks. Maybe we'll see some fun stuff. This has happened before. One way or another, we'll be back in about half an hour, and we'll be here to see our final game of the regular season.